Recording is on.
All right, everyone. Well, let's get started here. I'm gonna give you guys our vision statement tonight. Change it up a little bit. So welcome. At Trust Medicine People, we are building a movement rooted in ancient wisdom, financial empowerment, and regenerative innovation. Through our plant medicine retreat centers, we create sacred spaces for healing, transformation, and deep connection with nature's intelligence. Our financial services empower individuals and businesses by restoring financial sovereignty through credit repair, business funding, and private irrevocable hybrid trusts. Beyond healing and finance, we are committed to regenerating the earth by partnering with leading green tech companies to restore ecosystems, uplift underserved communities through regenerative agroforestry, and execute charitable missions that create lasting impact. By integrating cryptocurrency into our ecosystem, we ensure sustainable funding for our vision, decentralizing wealth and opportunity for those who need it the most. Our mission is to weave together ancient traditions, modern technology, and financial empowerment to create a world where people thrive in harmony with the earth. We are the bridge between the past and the future, the spiritual and the practical, the medicine and the movement. We are Trust Medicine People. So welcome everyone to the call, the meeting of the minds, the open mic. We appreciate you all being here. And Yossi, go ahead and take it away, brother.
Okie dokie, guys. Yep. Thank you so much for hopping on the call. We, as all of you know, who've been on the call.
I see feet. It's only feet. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, footsteps. Yep, I'm just walking the path over here. Yes, ma'am. So anyway, our traditional disclaimer is, look, we're not lawyers, we're not CPAs. The information that you find on this call is for educational purposes only. If we all participate and we all help to lift each other up, it is for spiritual edification and hopefully for some laughs and comic relief. That being said, we do claim all natural and unalienable rights granted to us by our Creator. And through that, we encourage you guys to treat this as like a family gathering where we're all just sitting around talking, sharing some really potent information about how to enliven our spirits and align us on our path toward transformation. That will include a lot of sometimes techie stuff. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. If you have questions that are more personal, if you have questions that are more personal in nature, please refrain from sharing personal details on this call. We can always have a back-end conversation. You can either private message me through direct message me, or you can contact one of our moderators, or just go through Trust Medicine People and you'll be able to contact us that way.
Just a second. I apologize for muting. I wanted to apologize for accidentally unmuting myself and interrupting you in the middle of your.
You're good. You're good.
Prologue,
we're just flowing here.
Well, I shouted for my dog and I went feet, and then I saw that my shit was unmuted and I went, oh crap. Like, that's one of the reasons why most of the time I'm muted during the conversation, because I'm spouting some kind of weird shit. And
okay,
that's
well,
all.
That being said, we do encourage people to mute your mic whenever you're not speaking. You know, we try to have some kind of decorum, so raise your hand, but nobody's here to shame anybody. And like I said, we're all just tribes, so we're all learning this as we go. And technology can sometimes be some kind of funky in our life.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit wobbly with the.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a little bit wobbly with the technological situation. I've been trying to chime in, and every time there's kind of a blockage or a confusion that I find. But I'm here tonight, so I'm gonna shut up now and listen.
No, it's all good. Yep, free flowing. Thank you, Goat Feet.
Yeah, Goat Feet.
Mr. James, do you have any questions that came through the chat box while we weren't looking?
Well, I don't see any questions, but I wanted to personally, I wanted to thank Sarah for joining in tonight. She was one of the people that heard what I was saying on X. So
welcome, Sarah.
Yeah, welcome, Sarah. You know, they allowed me to open up and kind of talk about, what we're doing. And the beginning of that conversation and why I got kind of excited and wanted to open up about that especially is because they were talking about a process that I believe everyone, at least in the social media world is familiar with. that knows about this, but there's a lot of red flags in doing that process. You know, there's a lot of scary things that can happen to people if they don't do it correctly. So typically what I like to do is I like to open with a question, and then that leads to further questions, and then people are welcome to speak their minds and ask questions that they like as well related to these topics or further topics about medicine and health and other things that we cover. But traditionally we speak about trusts first and how to, you know, separate yourself correctly and do the right thing so you're not getting in trouble, right? So Yosi, my first question for tonight is it safe to remove yourself from the government systems, revocation of election and licenses?
Safe? I
that.
wouldn't think it's safe. You know, anytime you're creating any kind of situation where you're essentially throwing red flags up, you're going to be seen. And when you're seen, whether it's now or 10 years in the future, when you've been put in a database somewhere, you know, you don't want to be on certain lists, right? And those types of actions, that adverse type of response to an entity that you didn't create, you have nothing to do with it. It's an implied contract at best and done through signatory adhesion of your mother without your knowledge or consent. Now, she didn't know the terms and conditions of the contract. You don't know the terms and conditions of the contract. We know it has something to do with leveraging your body and connecting it to an artificial entity that's essentially an employee of a corporation that has a very specific structure where it can actually leverage you as if you were chattel, but a very high priced chattel. And it can get an insurance contract on your head, which it has. And that insurance contract, you can then pay into the cash value of it, which people do through. And by paying into that, there's a social safety net that's provided. And when you reach a certain age of maturity, you're able to withdraw from that policy. Whatever government/corporation does, where we have a guttural response to it, where we want to essentially disengage from it, that's programmed. And the disengaging from it can often get you into deeper hot water than you started out with, right? So we definitely have a more prudent approach. We don't advise people go off half-cocked without all of the information, revoking elections and, you know, burning your social security card or whatever radical thing that we want to do as an emotional response to essentially a parasitic system. It's much better if our approach is, and again, you know, each one teach one, and if it resonates, it resonates. If it doesn't resonate, then, you know, follow your own truth. But our whole approach is, well, if we didn't create it and somebody else did, but we still can derive some kind of benefit from it, and at the same time, it's where all of the liability is attached, well, why not just let it sit there and let it bleed? And if we can derive some kind of benefit from it, then we derive benefit from it. Like when you reach that age of maturity and you can collect Social Security and you can get a little bit of an extra cushion, even if you've made it by that time. That extra cushion, go ahead and donate it to your favorite cause or flip it back into the trust res so that you can keep expanding it and blowing it up and compounding that wealth through generations, right? Because we all know in our hearts what we would do if we had access to resources and a temperament that we could train ourselves with through a philosophy or like a cosmology that could unite us and align us on a similar path where, you know, we all know what we want to do in this world and that it's not what's being done, right? And that's I think at its core the thing that prompts the response to revoke the election and or send in a bunch of IRS forms trying to discharge debt through a transmitting utility that you don't know exactly how it works on both sides of the books. And essentially, when you're doing that, you're playing with the accounts receivable side of the accounting, which is the invisible side that's created at the same time as the side that you can see. And when you're creating with whenever you're trying to derive benefit from something that's invisible, albeit it might seem like it's free, and you might get mixed results, and sometimes those results might work out in your favor, but it's still black magic because you don't know how it was constructed. You don't know essentially the entity that you're praying to. But if you can really dial in a framework where you have a sincere contract with your creator, let's say, and I know, you know, for some of us, you were created from within, and that is where it dwells. And for others, it's the Pachamama. And, people have many different variations on what that means. But all of us can really dial in something that we can live in service to that's greater than ourselves. And as long as you have a contract in place where you live in service to that as a 24/7 at-will volunteer employee to that dream, then you're golden. And all of that liability, it falls away. The liability is attached to the ego. Ego identification is the trap. That's the trap. The cheese is the cheese. It's what you normally would chase after, but it's a trap. So that's the reason why we liken what we do and the trust documentation that's at the core of it to some kind of modern day manumission process, is because it's more of a manumitting vehicle. And manumission was the process that a slave went from having paperwork, or rather not having any paperwork, just being essentially a number or a fictitious name on a ledger somewhere, so that the slave owner could leverage their whole flock of slaves for some kind of loan if needed. So rather than being in that kind of a situation, which essentially still exists, it's just become more inclusive, or we've all become slaves. It doesn't matter what color your skin is, and so on. Right. So rather than even play with that kind of an entity that would be so deceptive to create that kind of a system designed to exploit you, and then think that you can possibly go and revoke all of your signatures, or when you get pulled over driving down the highway doing 7 miles per hour over the speed limit, that you could get away with some kind of logic to an officer that hasn't been trained in logic. And you see what I'm saying? Like, there's an appropriate way to go about this, and a way that can free a lot of people. And it can, at its core, be, if anybody were to take it on as their own, a liberation cosmology. And at the same time, it can be the thing that tightens that noose and, clicks down on those shackles.
Excellent, Yosi. That explains it for me. Sarah, are you able to hear? You can go ahead and cue your mic and let us know. I think you're having some issues.
Yep, we got it working.
All right, good. Just want to check there. So, once again, I open with the question just to get things moving here. But, if anyone has anything to ask or wants to ask, the floor is open. So please feel free to go ahead and ask your questions. Okay, well, if no one has a question, okay, Trippy, if you're trying to ask a question and you can't get your mic working, go ahead and type it in, and then I'll go ahead and say it out loud for Yosi.
Yeah, and also Trippy, if your mic's not working, sometimes it's because of the Facebook permissions. If you clicked on the link directly from Facebook, you have to have the permissions on for Facebook to use your microphone, because it's going through Facebook. So what you can do is you can just type in chat into a browser. We use incognito tabs, but you can just type it into your browser, and then you'll be able to access that permission, and then you'll be able to use your microphone. And then I just want to make sure, Sarah, you have audio now. Yes, perfect. Okay. All right, James, go ahead, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Right. I'm just gonna. Okay. So another question I have. We don't really like to get too political here. That's not the goal. There's one side, there's another side. We're just trying to break free from both sides, because that's pretty much an illusion. But my next question is, Yosi, what do you foresee with the next move with the Federal Reserve? Because I think a lot of our slavery and the debt that we have to pay and taxes, it ties into the Federal Reserve. That's not a system that's inside America, that's outside the American corporation. So I just want to know what you think about the future of what that looks like.
Got it. Yeah. Well, they're going to have to throw the dog a bone, so to speak. They will have to give the people something, so that, it's all about bread and circuses, right? So they're going to have to give us something. And then that thing is going to have to entice people, at least initially, enough to be able to sign down with what it is that they have in the pipeline, which is much worse. It always is. Every time you're dealing with, you say we don't like to get political, and I get it. And it's the truth. There is if anything, the discussions that we have are based on sincerely held religious beliefs. Where politics aligns with those beliefs, we can't help but be political, right? So in that kind of a space, yes, the collapse of the Federal Reserve System and the ushering in of a new AI-based tokenized system is something that is in the pipeline. It's something they will implement. They'll probably do it by dripping it out. They'll probably do it by incentivizing it. Something like, making XRP essentially a product that can be consumed and traded by every government, without some kind of liability attached to it, which it currently might have right now. They have to perfect their security interest on these tokens, which they probably have by now. But once they do that, and once they control the supply to at least the degree where they can dictate the way that everything swings or whether it stabilizes, that's when it's going to be bad news, right? Because they've got a bunch of AI bots out there already learning from everything that anyone's doing while they're trading. So they know our psychology better than we do. So they will be able to manipulate the international currency trade and international trade in general. Now, I was hoping you were going to ask me about tariffs, brother, because that is something that will be the domino that actually clicks that Federal Reserve System over and makes it so that it's no longer a thing that we, just something that we read about in the history books. It'll just take on a different name, a different organization. It'll look like something completely foreign to us, so we won't associate it with it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I would like to know about tariffs if you want to go on to that topic.
Well, I mean, ultimately, the consumer pays the tax, right? So if people can't get cheap shit on Temu anymore, it's going to actually put more stress on the and some level, the people who are running the Trump administration, they would know what they're doing with this, because it is a great strategic move for the United States and as an entity. And at the same time, as a corporation, it might actually backfire on them. Because there are ways around those tariffs that we have that are built into the trust documentation that's at the core of what we're doing. And right away, you have to realize that there are always exceptions and exemptions for every rule. So they'll make it look a certain way. And the people who sign their names with a digital signature will all have to comply with that. And all public side entities will have to comply with that. But private side entities will still be able to get that exemption.
Perfect. All more for a reason to be on the private side.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Yosi. Wild, you have a question? You can go ahead and take the floor.
Yeah, how you doing there, fellas? I been in a discussion with a fella. He said there's a quantum financial system that's going to take over, and he thinks that everybody will get a basic wage and all this sort of stuff, and thinks it's going to be so much better. He's waiting for the system to fall.
Yeah, you can think that something like that's going to get better. There's that saying, I'm not sure exactly how it goes, but it's like, people who go through hard times, they raise children who are strong, or rather they're strong. And then because of their strength, they're able to do a lot in this world to be impactful and be that strength. But they often raise very weak children, and vice versa. Right. So those weak children often raise strong children because they create an atmosphere where things are falling apart again. And I think we just keep going through these cycles over and over and over again. I do think that quantum computing, that is the AI, mainframe essentially that's going to connect everything and is going to make it so that this thing can be streamlined without much human thought involved. And once we remove that, then there's a lot more couch potatoes. There's a lot more people just sitting in front of their computers or holding these hypnotists that we are, that I specifically am holding in my hand right now and talking into. So that can't be good for our health, and it won't be good for our long-term health. It will more turn us into like cyborgs. And all of the evidence shows that that's pretty much the way that everything's going anyway. So, I mean, I don't think resistance is futile. I think that a return to the natural ways and a return to the earth specifically and to the nature is the thing that's required. And more importantly, a return to our heart space. And then, the resistance comes naturally just through the disengagement. The biggest act of political resistance that there is being with spirit, connecting with spirit, spiritualism, if you want. You know, that's the highest form of political resistance. If you guys want to know what to do to prevent that system from taking over your life, just connect with the breath, right? Connect with the breath and sit in meditation, silence the mind, empty it out once in a while.
Yeah. This fella doesn't like the trust because he says it's all fiction.
Well, I would argue that on some level he's right. All ideas are fiction. Some ideas are more powerful than others. Some ideas are really dangerous, right? And we know that fictions are what dictate commerce. You know, the entire commercial system that's been set up of trade and books being balanced and, you know, commerce in general, it's all done through fictions and fictitious entities. If it weren't, there would be nothing. At this point in our, if you want to call it evolution, and we're at a place where we operate pretty much exclusively through fictitious entities. Now, some of those fictitious entities we can actually commandeer because we can reduce those implied and adhesion contracts to writing. Now, writing is a fiction, I guess. It's an idea, right? And I mean, if we want to go real deep into this, all ideas are fiction. The fact that we're talking to each other right now, fiction. At one point, the devices that we're communicating through and the crystals within them, all fiction, fictitious uses for them. And then through time, and time is the thing that tests all things, right? And through that, you can get demonstrable results where a fiction can turn into truth and can turn into something that is actually animate and takes on a form of its own. Now, there is a deep history of utilizing certain legal principles, especially the principles that we embed in these trusts, in order to be able to not only have that private side covered, but have some kind of public side facing documentation to be able to use to communicate with the public fictions that are dictating the terms and conditions of your environment. So yeah, if you don't want to deal with fictions, either go find a spring, build yourself a hut, and learn really well to meditate, to fast, you know, dry fast if possible, as much as possible, and, you know, have a really good garden. That would be the best way to not deal with fictions. Aside from that, if you live in a world where you're encountering others on a daily basis, you will be dealing with fictions. And I know it's a roundabout way, and I probably didn't answer the question, but at the same time, that's, you know, that's just my take on it.
But the way that I'm seeing it, it's while we have bits of paper that can be written on, that this system's just not going to go away. So that you can put whatever you want on that bit of paper, and that's what you go by. If you have it done up properly, I think that's what this trust is all about.
That's right, because ultimately, the entities that you're communicating with, the paper that they're reading or that a system is reading, they have to be able to recognize it, meaning they had to have at one point, they had to have cognized or seen something that resembled it so that it passes their resistance test. There has to be legalese in it. There's no way around that. You can't just you can, in its purest form, write a trust out on a napkin. But, you know, if you really need to use it to be able to execute a will or be able to protect your sovereignty, good luck with that. Good luck with taking the napkin into the bank even and trying to get a loan. It doesn't work like that. Everything's got to be documented, and it's got to be documented thoroughly. And there has to be some kind of perfection involved. Otherwise, it doesn't meet the standard of care that would be required for such an entity to exist.
But it's got to be done that it's recognised within the system itself that you're dealing with. Otherwise, what's the point of having it?
Yep. That's why you'll notice there is that core trust document that you have that you keep close to your chest. You keep it in the fireproof safe, but then you have an abstract. You have a certificate. The abstract always will lay out, hey, look, these are the powers, the duties, the responsibilities, and what this trustee can do, right? And often that's the very things that you need to do in order to be able to operate in the world of commerce. So there's your public side facing entity, but it's written explicitly. You're only showing them maybe 1 out of 100 cards, but you're doing it with 4 pieces of paper. And then a proof, an affidavit that the trust exists, that's been notarized through a notary that they accept. And that right there is your public side facing document, but it really doesn't mean anything without the instruction manual on the back end and all of the annex materials that are in there and all of the scheduling forms and the full estate plan that we put together, right? Because that right there is the thing that is the wealth creation machine. And if you study it and you go over it and you pour through it and you take notes and then you come back to these open mics and we talk about it and we chop it up because other people have the same questions, right? And then from that point, you've got a lot of free knowledge being offered here and a lifetime support system. And then when you get really stuck on the real personal stuff where we've dialed it in enough and we've gone over it in a free setting, then come to us on the back end to schedule a consult, brother.
Yeah, sorry, I just clicked on a bloody video then. Sorry about that.
You're good.
Yeah,
brother.
you'll see there's you know, my opinion of the QFS, whatever they end up trying to implement, I think what it really comes down to is tolerance. You know, if enough people don't like something, it's either they're going to try to make them eat it or there's going to be a change made. And I've seen enough things, you know, there's a lot of even movie and series references like Black Mirror, if you guys have familiar with, if you've seen the Black Mirror series, or like Idiocracy, you know, and Yossi's talking about the technology. I mean, we implement AI ourselves and it makes our job a ton easier. It saves a ton of time. But it's at a certain point when the AI takes over, you know, what are people even going to do? And that's where, you know, like the Schwab Foundation, they want people just sitting with their VR goggles on. And as long as their character in the VR world is fit and just like, you know, like in The Sims, they're gonna neglect themselves. And
Absolutely.
that's what they want to happen. You know, at some point we don't really, if you look at technology, human interaction and human ability is not even going to be needed at some point in the future. Quite frankly, to me, I'm looking forward to that. You know, we have our allodial titles to land. We get our community together. We grow food. We grow families. We go fishing. We go hunting. We you know, we garden and build stuff and just have fun with our life. You know, I'm looking
At the same
technology
time, brother,
takes over.
it's that double-edged sword that we always
It
talk
is,
about,
it
right?
is.
That's which is
Yeah.
essentially why you know how I'm always like, hey, listen, you know, you guys do the AI stuff. I have to insulate myself from it. Because
Yeah.
when I sit down to a terminal, I can't be, or I have my notepad out, AI isn't present. And I can't, because of the confidentiality that's involved in the documentation that I draft out. And when I'm in the lab, it's truth. It's something that's coming through another human who can feel and, you know, who can interact and who's talked to the person that I'm drafting the documentation for. I've gone out for a walk in the forest and meditated for a few hours, maybe even with some plant help, right? And just to be able to dial that in and then come back and punch it up. And often what I find is that you have to insulate yourself from the beginning. If you try to clean up the mess at the end, you will end up kind of like, you know, Idiocracy, just baiting all the time. And I'm not going to be baiting. This is my resistance, right? This is where authenticity is the only currency that we actually have available to us. So if something's not authentic, if it doesn't come from the heart, if it doesn't flow through the soul, it's not real, right? It's not real. And that's the thing that we're guarding ourselves against if there is any kind of resistance, is being as real as possible.
Yeah, and
So-
sometimes we gotta definitely, like you're saying, from the very get-go is to resist that. I had a friend years ago, she got her first VR, right? VR headset. And I told myself, you know, I got an addictive personality. I'm sure I would really like that. You know, that looks really cool. She's sending videos of her and, you know, Meta World or whatever. And I said, I'll never even try one of those on, never. Well, lo and behold, I don't know, about a year ago, I was at a buddy's house and his kid had VR and he's like, you got to try this. And I'm actually in medicine and I put this VR set on and I'm walking around the house. I'm like, this is the coolest freaking thing ever, right? And it was in that moment I said, I put it down. I said, I'll never put on another pair of those again because I'm not getting stuck there. So yeah, to fight that resistance from the very, very beginning is going to be definitely part of the key of the growth of the future. Anyway, Trippy had his hand up. Janai put hers down. Trippy, did you still have a question?
It wasn't so much of a question. I was just wanting to tap in on kind of a question. My friend invited me here because I'm on a lot of things y'all have talked about. I have been studying on for a long while. You mentioned medicine too, so I was just like, hmm. Anyway,
I'm so happy that you're here. Sorry, I interrupted. This is my beloved. I'm here. He's
um,
here. Yay!
you
The human
asked
invites. Welcome, Trippy.
Yes,
about
I have
ideas.
invited. I have invited the humans.
So it was
Go
mentioned
ahead.
if it was a bad idea to, so I don't believe my plan wasn't to revoke, because that's always a bad idea. My idea was to file to be a sovereign entity and then utilize UCC1 to
Ah, yes, sir.
to the private sector.
Well,
Uh,
that right there. Okay, so the first thing is what you said, right? And I'm going to let you continue because I know this question can blow up, right?
yeah,
But to file to be a sovereign, asking for permission to be free is anti-freedom. It's anti the very thing that you're trying to do or that you want to do, you're called to do. There is a way to do it. It's just not to do it through that way. Now, the perfecting of a security interest, the only way that you can utilize a UCC in reality is if you perfect the security interest. Now, you can file fraudulent UCCs because you don't know what the other side of the contract of the entity you're trying to commandeer through their system is. And you can do that, and it could possibly lead to dangerous results somewhere down the line. It might not be initially, it might
right.
be 10 years from now, right? When you file another document and that document, that document did it right there, because that document plus the UCC filing to try to perfect a security interest on an entity that you didn't create and you have no accounting for is the thing that could put you in a jail cell. So I highly advise that you don't do any official paperwork if you're seeking liberation. There is a way to get that liberation and to operate through a private entity and allow that public entity to sit there. It can have, you can put $100 in a bank account that's associated with it. You get sued, they have $100. That's nothing. If that entity on the public side, if it wanted to, could apply for food stamps and Medicare and disability. God forbid you should ever be in that kind of a situation. While the trust entity on the private side can blow up a fortune because you are not living. You are a volunteer employee of that, volunteer at will, in service to the dream, right? So that thing right there can create wealth. It just can't create wealth in service to you. It has to be something greater than yourself. That's the catch right there.
So I hear it's just there's reasons why I wanted to do the sovereign route. For one, my understanding is it isn't permission; it's a declaration because all the filings are declarations. It's reclaiming your own entity because sadly they own us through these paper with all the documents and birth certificate, social security. Separate. From my understanding, that declaration is separating yourself from. It's claiming your body of the earth. You know what I'm saying?
That is absolutely the thing that we do through the trust documentation. That agreement, that contract that you have with your creator, whoever that you label that as,
Right.
is something that supersedes all of the man-made contracts. It falls under a religious exception and a religious exemption. Also, you can leverage agricultural exemptions and a whole bunch of financial technology to be able to pay 30 cents for a dollar rather than $3.14 or whatever it is, right? You see what I'm saying? There are ways of going about this middle of the road without causing ripples, without creating chaos in your life, even if it's potential. My wife always told me, look, if you want to speed, but make sure you can afford the ticket and that you know what the ticket is. Make sure that everything is cool so that, if you
Right.
get pulled over, you're cool. You can afford the ticket. No worries. I'm not going to spaz out. Just, give me the ticket.
See,
Right.
that's why I haven't filed yet either, is because I'm aware of all the obstacles that happen whenever you file to be a sovereign. I'll bet.
Yeah, the best thing that you could do is a record corrections process, brother. If you really want to get down to the nitty gritty of this, and the short and long of it is
Right.
a record corrections process is a monologue. And it's the thing that you can do to be able to amplify the private presence and be able to insulate that public entity so that it doesn't have even 80% of the liability that it had. You know, you can clip that off and you can make it so that it's not really a thing unless you need it to be. And that's the situation that you really want to be in. I know it's very tempting, especially as you go further down the rabbit hole and you get inundated with information overload, to want to do something to dissolve these contracts. But remember, these are most of the ones that really link your body to the artificial entity are undisclosed and implied contracts that happen through some kind of weird process that we're not exactly aware of. We can glean into its existence. We know how it works, right? But we can't necessarily say this is exactly how it works. Now, if you created something, whatever that may be, you can definitely tell me how you did it, why you did it, what you can do with the thing, and then you can operate through it. You see what I'm saying?
Right. And that's cool. I mean, if there's an alternative route, I'm all ears. The reason, again, the reason I was focused on sovereign is because I would therefore be claiming as a entity of myself. A lot of the things that I'm going to be working with revolve around medicine and technologies and things that aren't going to be very welcomed by
That's
technocracy.
that is the yep, that is the precise legal framework and structure that we create. We only work with people who have vision, who have dreams, who have some kind of sincere calling within them to do something in service to something greater than themselves. So because of that, this is the platform that we're promoting, because listen, I might want animal rescues all over the place. I might want to engage in regenerative agroforestry communities that can feed orphanages and do all kinds of amazing stuff with green tech and some real bleeding edge technology. But I can't be in everywhere at once. The best thing that I can do is leverage my unique skill set to actualize that dream through the 1,000 points of light or whatever it is that are connecting to it, and that I am connecting with them because it's their dream too, right? So we're all just dreaming the same dream. But the thing is we don't have any tools en masse, and the tools that we can amass through this process are pretty extraordinary. And the way that they compound wealth, they can do the same thing to compound freedom and to compound community, and they really feed your dream. That's what it's designed to do. It's a growth engine for whatever it is that you want to do.
Okay. I mean, I need to go back and watch. She had mentioned the other videos are recorded. I need to go back and listen. Yeah, but yeah, that was kind of my question. And what I wanted to throw in, because I wasn't sure the details, because like I said, all I care about is that separation and claim, not even separation, it's claiming my body and not allowing a system to own me,
Correct. You're claiming not only your body, all of your biological fluids, any creation that came through your living hand, and any breath that flows through you that inspires you to do something greater than yourself. You claim all of that, right? So sovereignty is something that comes from within. How it's expressed is something that people have to be very careful with, because it can't be expressed in the same way that it's oppressed, that the spirit within is oppressed, right? That mechanism of oppression cannot be exploited to be able to express something inside of you that's greater than you. It's impossible. Logic dictates that that's an absurd thing right there, right? But we don't see it because we're trapped in the confines. And those parameters, those guardrails, while we definitely can knock them down, you can't drive a car for someone. I don't care about automated Teslas and stuff, you know what I mean? But you can't really get behind the wheel and get to your destination and feel the road underneath you unless you're doing it yourself. So
Right.
You know what I mean? So as long as it's something that's authentic and it's genuine and it comes from within, like we've said on previous calls, we don't care if you don't have, if you don't have 2 pennies to rub together, get 2 pennies, rub them together, and contact us, and then we'll figure out how to get you from point A to point Z, and then point Z being you're living your dream.
So I'm gonna butt in real quick. This is Goat Feet. Hey Tyler, I love you so much. I'm so happy that you dropped in to ask questions and that you're here, because I know that whatever this falls in line with, you're in line with it. So I'm delighted to hear you here. But I also see that someone else has something to say, so I want to make space for that because I'm interested in alternative perspectives, if that's all right. I think I saw a moose. It's a moose. Yeah, I'm driving, so I'm doing my best. But I wanted to make space for whoever wanted to say something, if that's available, if you hear me.
Yeah,
Am I heard?
can somebody
Am I talking to an invisible microphone? Okay, good.
Thanks, Go Feet. We appreciate it. Yeah, Soul has his hand up. Soul, go ahead, brother.
Okay, so I've been listening to some things about trust and stuff, just because I'm a Gemini. I like to really know things, right? So they were talking about this person was talking about when you build. Oh, I think she referred it to like your. I don't know if it was a construct, but it seems like a construct to me. So, but it was actually multiple trusts, in order to be able to leverage and use them. She called it the wealth building formula.
Mhm.
And I was just wondering, as far as like, so you have the LLC, and then what you do is you have a business trust for your LLC, right?
Well,
And then
you would have a core trust at the center, and then that trust would have sub trusts, ideally, right? You don't need to be going out there creating tons of trusts. Ideally, you need one for your whole life, and that one can have sub trusts, and those sub trusts can be essentially operating agreements. And if you want LLCs involved, they can be operating agreements that operate and extend a budget, and also have terms and conditions on that for those LLCs. So there are definitely ways of structuring this and going as deep as you want, and getting that even a pyramid structure set up where not only do you have horizontal and lateral movement, but you can move diagonally too, where every single entity, every sub-trust can share the full valuation of the trust, the master trust up at the top. You see what I'm saying?
okay, so can I have, on a fundamental level, a trust is just an agreement between entities, right?
Correct.
Does that make sense? And so whether you're
Well, it's
a
on
living
a
entity
logic.
or a
On a logic level, brother, it's A gives to B for the benefit of C, right? And then that from there, a trust is also something like you leave your child with a babysitter. You say, don't harm them. Obviously, put them in bed, feed them at this time, 8 o'clock's bedtime. And you creating a trust, a pact, something like that, right?
yeah, and that's like an implied trust. It's just spoken.
Yeah,
It's
well,
not.
it's implied, right? It's implied only because it's not written. And that's how most
Yeah, it's
trusts
not.
are created, is through implication.
Okay. Yeah. So then actually, it's not like you're making a whole nother trust for your business and a whole nother trust for your family and a whole nother trust. Or do
They
you actually
probably
write
are.
up trust?
They probably are, because honestly, not a lot of people know what they're doing. Not a lot of people treat this as a craft, right? So they just treat it as a get rich quick, some kind of alternative. There's not a lot of heart in that approach. It doesn't carry you as far. Even if you are able to create some kind of wealth through it, it still won't be as organic as it were if your heart print were on a piece of paper and it had everything that you needed to be able to organize it and actualize it, and it came as an instruction manual on the back end, right? That's the thing, that's the power behind it. It's not necessarily creating a trust. To create a simple trust, it could take a day, right? But it doesn't
Yeah.
have in it the things that you would need to be able to do the stuff that you need to be able to actually get your dream going. Should you be working with medicine or desire to teach children in a way where the state or any entity couldn't come in and say and dictate whatever those terms were, then you need some kind of documentation, and definitely on most of it on the back end, because you need privacy protections. And the only way that you can get those privacy protections is if you keep private and confidential And there will be
Yeah.
some, like when we eventually get your trust dialed in, brother, you know, that mystery school will be popping off. And, you know, your dreams, you'll see them come to life. And that's the thing that will carry those, not just a bunch of paperwork. It's something deeper than that. It's more like aligning with a vision. And the only way you can do that is with your signature.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And
Yeah.
and then also I guess another aspect of something that I've been thinking about is, as you know, Carlos brought me in to this group because we're figuring out a way to work things together. You know, like
Right.
so he has his vision, I have my vision, but a lot of our visions they come together in a lot of ways. Like we want to do kind of the same things in a lot of ways, but I still want to keep my I still want to be able to work with him, but keep my own separateness. Does that make sense? My
Sure,
own.
sure, absolutely. And listen, we will dial all of that in on the back end. I promise you, bro. Like, you
Yeah.
know, if there's one thing that we can do, it's make the exact thing that you want be the thing. But the only bottleneck is you seeing what the exact thing is and the exactness of it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So
Yeah.
imagination is the limit. And
All right.
guys, I see that I think Miss or Ms. Mr. Moose. Yeah, got some questions there pending.
Moose has mic access. Okay. Moose, as traditionally in any court case, the one who can pay the most for an attorney wins for couples and their children. Is there a way to build a joint trust, a marriage that supersedes the state?
Okay, hold up a second. I need you to repeat the question. You were choppy.
Traditionally, in any court case, the one who can pay the most for an attorney wins. This is often tragic for couples and their children. Is there a way to build in a joined trust or a marriage that supersedes the state?
Absolutely. Listen, if you, I'll tell you that the real quick answer is if you were of like a Quaker faith, right? Just look into what works first, and then try to emulate that. That's my approach, pretty much, right? If it works, emulate it, and then actualize it. Let it go. No reason to improve on what it actually is and what's worked in the past. So religion is always the thing that you want to lean into. Anytime that you're dealing with children, anytime you're dealing with the state, you want to make sure that it's based as some kind of entity where you come in as an agent and have the capacity to have that agency for that entity. So in this case, where there's children at play, we'll always recommend getting a trust and making sure that you have a real strong meeting of the minds, because there are always at least two people involved with any creation of a children, right? So definitely the mama takes priority, unless for some reason the mama isn't acting right or is hooked on some kind of substance and can't be not trusted, but you know doesn't really know any better for whatever reason. So you know you want to always make sure to look out for the biological material, look out for the creation between the two beings, and then look out for what's in the best interest of both of them. Now, mothers will always have a claim over their children. You can always just claim your biological material, but you have to be able to stand on it. And those mothers who can claim that aren't mothers who are on drugs. They're not on crack. They're not, you know, having a hard time where they can't lift themselves up and they've separated themselves from their children for whatever reason. So those mothers usually will be able to win in any kind of court case. And yes,
this is where
definitely.
I'm sorry.
Miss Jennifer, I do know what you're going through, and that's, I think it ties into the next part of that question. If you can outweigh the interest of the other side, if you have a man who's out there paying a lawyer and paying them and paying them and paying them, and you can somehow cut back on work, do whatever you have to be able to do all that pro se litigation yourself. Now just exhaust their bank account. At some point, they're going to yield. That's just the way it works every single time almost.
This is where I think, Yossi, I might need to have a private conversation with you because of my limited understanding of things of that sort. I think I communicated on the first open mic. I had about my daughter and my situation and where I was at and where I was trying to get to. I'm not sure if anybody remembers that. It's okay if not, but I would like a little bit more personal, in-depth connection and advice on how to approach things of that sort, because it's definitely a situation that I'm in and a prologue as to where I want to get to regarding custody and children and things of that
Gotcha.
sort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And actually what we've been kind of conceiving a little bit on the back end is that we can do some kind of private study session and just really go into this stuff and break it down, chop it up,
Yeah.
rebuild it, you
What
know,
I what
and do that with a group of women who are in a similar situation, who
that would
and you
that
know, women
sounds
always
so
need.
amazingly beautiful. I'm on the. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm interrupting
No,
because I think that
please.
my idea and your idea is totally kind of enmeshed and the same
Yes,
thing.
ma'am.
So, what I mean, would the consultation that you are suggesting is that I don't really want to use the word end game. And I just want to say I've been in and out this whole time. I'm making transit trips from house to house to do laundry. And this whole conversation has been a wonderful talk show for me and food for thought. But also, I'm thinking about my daughter and where I'm at and where she's at and what I need to do to get her where she needs to be. And um, I wonder what that,
How it
you know,
relates, right?
I do my best to hold, not necessarily hold back, but keep myself what is extremely personal.
Right.
You know, with my situation and the advice that I have to ask for doesn't feel 100% appropriate for a very open-minded
It's not.
situation.
It's
You
not.
preface,
It's
as
not.
you
It's just
preface,
general questions here, right? So as we
right,
dive into
right,
the specifics, we'll reach a point where the general questions will be very easy and straightforward. It's just for me, because of time constraints, it's much easier for me to just have you come on these open mics. We can discuss it
yeah,
because there's other people as well who could benefit from the information, right? And then I don't have to share it
absolutely.
a bunch of times. And then when we connect on the back end through a private consult, we'll know exactly how to dial your situation in with just some personal, you know, that real heart to heart stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So in private message, as we did briefly, just a little bit, I wonder what afterwards a private consult would look like and how much time I would have to kind of, I don't know how to say, assert my case and explain the personal details of what my situation is with you, or
I
tell
would
me.
suggest Roy, write every single question that you have right now down, okay? And then what we do during the private consult is we can treat it like a rapid fire, and we'll have it recorded at your discretion if you want, and we can then send you a summary packet and the whole everything with bullet points and everything outlining the conversation and some key points that you have to focus on, as well as maybe a task list if we can dial
Right.
that in.
But the efficiency would be accelerated if I had those bullet points and whatnot in the um
It doesn't have to be anything fancy. No, you don't need the bullet points.
the more that I organize it beforehand, the less,
There,
the more efficient the process of the consultation would be. You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely,
it
absolutely, yep.
requires a little bit of preparation and thought, which I have been doing as much as I possibly can be of this entire. It's funny. I want to ask anybody and everybody that's listening, have you watched Peanut? Shut up. Poppy, shut up. Shut up. Shut your fuck. It's okay. I'm here. I apologize. There are chihuahuas present. And so has anybody seen the Midnight Gospel? Is my question.
No.
This is a total space cast. For anybody that knows the origins of the Midnight Gospel, is Duncan Trussell, and it's been difficult for me to see this whole communication any other way. Soon here, I'm gonna have to mute myself. Like I said, I'm going in between houses to do
Yeah,
things.
we know a little bit about the Midnight Gospel. You've come across a Midnight Gospel, right now.
Oh, yes, I have. I live it. I know it. The whole ever
Yeah. I
since
mean,
I
this
kind
is
of
this is
dipped
where
into
we're
the
at
whole
right now.
trust medicine people situation, I went, oh my gosh, this is a space cast.
Oh yeah, yeah. We are very grounded. Like we really treat the principles as the foundational elements for how we conduct ourselves. So,
Yeah.
while it might sometimes we might go into quote unquote space, whatever that means, right? But at the same time, like it's always going to come back down to the ground, and hopefully we don't have to thump off the ground to be
Well,
able to
see,
learn our
I'm
lessons.
definitely more comfortable in space versus the um
Yeah, you can always go check out the YouTube channel. We have a team. They're going to be biting stuff up, putting it into shorts, and it'll be made as easily digestible as possible. And then we will have a website that's launched either tomorrow or the next day, which will have general information and ways of
cool. So
really,
hold
getting through
on.
this process a little easier.
So is this whole trust medicine people a very new operation? And
Well, it depends. I've been at this for a while now, right? And but we have several different things going on right now. But the Trust Medicine People core offering is this A to Z process where we connect with people who have similar dreams and similar visions, and we help them get to that vision so that they're actually living in it, and it stops being a fairy tale. Right. So
right.
that's the whole thing, right? That's the whole thing right there, right? So in a nutshell.
I've been in this fairy tale for about 2 years. How do you recommend I move forward with that?
Well, that's exactly what you're doing right now.
It is.
I recommend that you
being
hash it out.
invested.
We can only digest information as fast as we can. So I do recommend that, if you appreciate this conversation, go to the YouTube channel, play it while you're washing the dishes or whatever. And, have a notepad nearby and jot down some questions and bring them to the next open mic. And we'll just keep on doing this free offering as long as until the wheels fall off, essentially.
So I wonder how do I compare okay, I need a moment just to think through, structure this question, because like I said, most of the times I stay silent because whatever I might have to say or I don't know, it just seems too broad. A lot of the questions that I have are difficult to structure into words, but
You're doing a great job.
thank you so much. Wait, who am I talking to?
It's me, Yossi.
Yes. Well, naturally I get lost after saying, I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, what am I affirming, right?
Hi, Goat Feet. Can I just say hi? It's Janai.
Hi, Janai. I'm Goat Feet, but I'm Ashley. I've talked to you before,
Yeah,
Miss.
I remember. I just wanted to say hi, and I wanted to just let you know that I also what Yossi's saying is probably the best idea. If it helps you, I'd just like to interject and say that writing things down is really powerful. And what really helps me, because I've been in the same boat before, where, I can see, you have the best heart and the best intentions and are here to learn. Like me, I don't know a lot of this terminology. So I have to go over it and study. And I think I just forgot who it was, but I gave a thumbs up. I think it was Jiggy. Is read, study, formulate questions and then come back, because it is kind of like a focus group. Like there's a lot of people here that have questions, and a lot of times I'm like, oh, is my question even clear? But it really just, just read up on it, and questions will come to you, and write them down. And then you can do a consult with Yossi, or you can just ask, one question at a time, because you just start with, keeping it simple. What is, just write down like 5 questions that you have, and goals or dreams that you have in your list of possibilities. Because I'm kind of I'm older chronologically, but I'm still young, in formulating my dreams. So I just wanted to say that, write down your questions and then come back, and then, we're all asking questions, and there's no wrong questions. And Yossi and everyone's very graciously answered my questions. So I'm just introducing myself again and just saying hi. And I hope you have a great night.
Yeah, Janie, I appreciate that so much, because I think that coming out into this kind of social. Poppy, shut up. Oh, shush, shush, shush. I'm at a family friend's house and she has a couple chihuahuas. I'm doing laundry and they're all yelling at me. Edith, come inside. So I forgot what I was gonna say to Jeannie. I appreciate the reminder because it's where I've been at, really doing my best to introspect on what, I do. I have a ton of questions, but I want to make sure that I have the right questions on my list because I have a list of questions that are important, but not necessarily important. You know what I'm saying? I've been a hermit for years, and it really disconnects.
Yeah, Ashley, if it helps me sometimes too, like, when you're on the spot talking to a group and you got a lot going on, you got the chihuahuas and doing the laundry and all that. What it would probably help me and if you're the same, we kind of have the same kind of mind where we get really caught up and they call it maybe a little bit of ADHD and I get easily distracted and it's like my mind is always going a million miles an hour and it sounds like yours does the same. If you want to write down your questions in the chat and that way you can really ensure that you are getting across what you want to ask. Something to recommend might be easier for you.
It might be the chat writing down. I have a difficulty with text and translating my thoughts and my intentions into words in the moment when I have to channel that.
Like a
do,
recorder
I have been
right?
thinking of that and using it I feel like I'm meant to be in the 80s and using a voice recorder with a tape cassette like detective. Sure. But anyways, so I've tried that and it's been difficult to flow with the ideas that are going through my brain.
You don't need to at this point. That like we were discussing with the AI thing. You don't need to anymore. You just put him onto the recorder and you send him over to our tech team in the format that they are. And then we'll have it translated and then pre-fed to me. I'll know what questions to answer. And then, we'll roll.
You say tech team. But I feel much more comfortable one-on-one. And I've been holding myself back just a little bit, because I know that I reached out to you and we've been in brief contact through Messenger, but I've held myself back just a little bit, not to overload anybody or to, drop a bomb in a personal way, if you understand me.
Yeah, I feel you.
And so I see, this is not like I said, but as I'm noticing, this is all very new to me and it's a very different and broad outlet to share and oh, I see. Oh, does this help?
Yeah, actually, I just sent you a message on Messenger. Let's try this out. This might work. So you and I have a time.
I'm almost home. I saw it and I was like, oh, I see I have a message. I'm holding. I'm always multi. See, if you look at my profile, I have an idea of, and this is a theory and a situation that I wanted to communicate with everybody involved about before a consultation. Pulling into the driveway.
Okay, so Ashley, here's what I'm going to recommend.
Sure.
Let's we won't call it a consultation, but let's just have a one-on-one. We'll go over your vision and I'll write up a blueprint for you. Like this is what we do. Is a whole A to Z thing. So if you have a vision, you have an idea, you want to share it with people, we'll get together on the back end and you can just send me whatever you have. Okay. And then we'll utilize the technology because it does work. It does,
but I think well. Tony, if I'm hearing her correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Miss Ashley, but what you're saying is that you'd rather keep this very confidential, private, and if there were a way that you couldn't do it without tech in the less techy way, if that's the case, I'll just send you my we'll connect through a cell phone conversation. That's the best we could do right now.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the less techy way, but as far as apart from open mic, it feels more appropriate. Oh goodness, things keep pocket. But Janae wants to speak. Let Jenny let Jenny speak. I want to hear what she has to say. Goat feet.
Hi. Yes. I just had a question when you guys are finished. Thank you. So I was just going back to Mr. Saul's kind of vision, and or is it soul? Anyway, I call him soul. So correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But I had a question about, like, I had several questions. One is merging trusts. Like, soul is a person similar to myself. I see myself working with people. I'm not, obviously, none of us are great on our own. Like, I'm not a great accountant person, right? So I would need to trade skills with so and so. So I'm just, I guess my question is, like, is there such a thing as, again, because the terminology is all new to me,
Yeah,
but
no,
like
I
merging
yeah.
trust, if
Sure
that
that a
makes
lot of
sense.
the trust situation
You
relies on multiple symbiotic relationships.
here's the
Kind of
thing. Or
what
is
they're accountable for,
okay.
if it is a trusted communal situation, there are things that each person would be kind of trusted and symbiotically,
It
what I
doesn't
mean?
necessarily even mean that though. When like listen, language has been used to manipulate us for a long time, and it just keeps getting more and more dialed in. So when people
Yeah,
think that
spelling.
I get the symbiotic relationship that you're talking about. As far as the merging of trusts, that's not something you necessarily want to happen unless it's done intentionally and you have some kind of you can dictate essentially the terms and conditions upon which those trusts have a relationship together. Now, if you have 100 different trust entities, they can all be connected just with operating agreements. One operating agreement could connect all of them, and they can all operate under that agreement in order to form one invisible entity. That invisible entity can also have a public side, where each one of those trusts has an interest, and it could even be, if you design it correctly, a 100% ownership interest in the thing, right? So you just pretty much anything that you can conceive of is something that can be done through proper documentation and really properly structuring some kind of entity that you can operate through to advance your dream. Now, it works really well with husbands and wives. Anytime there are two people who both have the same type of setup involved, they can form marriage contracts, operating agreements. They can operate it as a business that's completely invisible when it wants to be and can come out on the public side when it needs to be. So
Yeah,
there are a
so
lot of
I'm
different,
thinking of
yeah.
where three or more of us are gathered, and there's a word for that. I think it's allegory. It's an entity that's created from a multi-personality input. Are you aware of kind of the idea that I'm presenting?
Absolutely. I think it's where two or more are gathered, right? And I
Is
think
it
that
two
it
or
actually has a biblical context that
yeah,
obviously
yeah, that's where
supersedes the language, right? And
yes,
essentially what
yeah,
it
that's
means
where
is
I'm
that we
coming from.
amplify our presence here by connection and through connection. And that connection alone is enough to be able to amplify the thing that's inside of us. That is the most potent thing that exists. So yes, where two or more are gathered, your dreams come into fruition. So it is very vital that we have intricate web of connections and a network of connections, and that we all essentially are operating on the same footing or the same foundation, right?
I have a
So that's
question
that,
for Jiggy
right?
when
That
you're
is the thing.
done. Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. No, please.
Um, Hi, Jiggy, can you hear me? Okay, I don't know. He's commenting in the thing, but I know he and I have very similar beliefs about, doing away with the straw man. And I wanted to ask his opinion. I think I may have brought it up before about when you're filing, whether to do it in pro per or propria persona or in sui juris. And I was really hoping to get his opinion on that. Is his mic not working too?
Go for it, Mr. Jiggy. Take off.
He's having mic issues too. Dang it.
Hey, Jennifer, do you have a copy of Black's Law?
I
Sister?
do. I actually, my boss has the 6th edition in her library.
And I don't know why.
I ordered the 5th edition, and I have it.
The 5th edition, that's the one right there.
Yeah.
So when you look up those definitions, can you see that there is a kind of like a top down and that there's an umbrella for one of the definitions that encompasses all of the other ones?
flipping through it, I don't really see much of that.
Well, define the entities: sui juris, impropria persona, and pro se. Correct?
Okay, so just look them up in here and see what because I mean, I've looked into.
I mean, the way that listen, and Mr. Jiggy, if you want to jump in on this, it's all good. The way I see it is, and please, if you have something that shows otherwise, there is an entity that comes in, and the capacity that it comes into a court setting in can be pro se, meaning it is representing itself. There is some kind of agency and capacity at play. The pro se essentially establishes the agency. Now, sui juris, that is in the living, correct? Like the living person, right? So in the living person, that's your capacity. The impropria persona part of it, and now we're talking very basic, right? I don't have the blacks right in front of me, but I usually plead the fifth with questions like this, and I'll just read the definition straight up. But the impropria persona, from how I grok it, is I'm coming in as a living man with the proper capacity as the agent at best of a fictitious entity that was created to be able to hold my body as surety and put bonds on me unknowingly through some kind of constructive trust that's being created through this court case. And the name on the named account that you're bringing in here, I'm an agent for it at best. So that would be the best capacity that I can see coming in right off the bat. Now that can get much more complex, and you can keep on rolling with that. You can talk about all of the blood that goes through your veins, and as deep as you want to get into it. But as tempting as
you're suggesting the propria persona.
Well, I'm saying that it's part of the same thing. I'm saying that it's not possible without the other two. That's all. Right. So you can't actually come in there, impropria persona without representing yourself. Right. So you need to be pro se. Can't be sui juris, because why are you going in there in the first place? If who summoned the body? Right. Except for they summoned an entity that the body is just so happen linked to because of an implied contract. So so that's it right there. I don't like to, as much as it might seem like there's a lot of complexity here, and I'm doing my best to boil it down to its simplest form, right? All of those exist only to be able to bring you in the proper capacity. The agency is the thing that you're denoting when you're saying that you're, pro se, sui juris, impropria persona. Ideally, it would be all three at the same time. The impropria persona can't happen without the other two.
I wonder
Otherwise,
if I could just put them all on there at the same time. I mean, I'm thinking just because, my boss, she is obviously a lawyer, so she said to do it pro per, which is basically just a short. So I was just wanting to know what Jiggy's perspective on that was, but apparently his mic's not working.
Can we unmute that?
For him. Say that again.
Ma'am. Yeah, I was just saying if we can unmute his mic, that would be cool.
Yeah, I'll just type the question in. I mean, I don't know. Can you hear me? I don't know if
you guys feel free to fill that chat up. Okay, guys, while we're waiting for any technical difficulties to resolve themselves, does anybody have any more questions? Doesn't necessarily have to be related to any topic that we've discussed so far. What's up, Janai?
Thank you for your patience. So I had another question, and I'm trying to type it in the comments, and for some reason it keeps, I don't know, it just keeps going without me. So I end up breaking up my own conversations. I guess I had like a question about, I'm sort of like a Whitney Webb fan, and not like, I don't get too polarized, but I'm wondering like worst case scenarios, like in the case of digital wallet, and like we were talking about AI, and it got me thinking, because I'm also I honestly don't really even grasp it. I'm so old school. I can't, I know it's here and I deep fakes and I'm familiar, but when you're talking about writing things in writing things down and staying off of the AI, I'm very, very much the same. And you were saying there's a vehicle to do that, which I would appreciate, as private as possible. If I were to do something like this, future speaking, I'm also wondering more about like, can you elaborate maybe on like cryptocurrency? Because I'm looking at, you know, the state of the world and I'm thinking, well, okay, one world government, you know, we have, you know, pre-crime, you know, AI that's like really not correct, you know, and we have all of these potential scenarios, which I know you can't predict, you know, all of the future, but there's certain trends, right? The carrot and the stick, the one world government, you know, things of this nature, and the one world banking system, right? Where it's all, like you were saying earlier, like conglomerate. So like how specifically or abstractly could you comment on that for me a little bit, or elaborate on how you see, if are you using cryptocurrency? I mean, how do you see that?
Minimal.
Okay.
What we're doing through TMP and some of the other partners that we're tapped into is we're creating, you know, essentially there's a whole way of learning tokenomics and then applying tokens, utility tokens, to be able to leverage what's going on, leverage the trend, as you mentioned, right? And we're doing that in order to be able to not profit from it ourselves, but be able to turn that into charitable giving and amplify it through dictating through smart contracts, which are essentially just contracts on the back end of a token that's created. And that contract dictates the terms and conditions. And, you know, if you say, listen, I want to donate to an orphanage, but I don't want it going towards corn and candy bars. The thing that I want it going toward is a water cistern. I want some keyhole gardens built. Boom. Now that token gets allotted on that. And as soon as it fills up that queue right there, they get that, you know, they get that item or they get that thing that you do, right? So there are a lot of benefits to it. At the same time, when we're talking about one world government, you have to realize that it's always going to look like something like the opposite of what it is. So yeah, Trump wants to make, you know, and again, this is not necessarily a political discourse. We're just shooting the shit right now. He wants to make Canada 51st state. Well, I mean, on its head, you say some absurd thing like that, and at some point, people are going to just acclimate to it. The more absurd you can say something when you're in a political, you know, when you're in a position of power like that, the more that people just take it as that's granted. And then what happens as a result of that? And maybe battling the cartels on the south, on the border, the Mexican border. Well, I mean, there could be a situation where you have one American nation that encompasses just a North American Union of sorts. And that right there could be done through the guise of you know, a nationalist, somebody pro-America, America first type of thing. And that, you know, we have to be very careful because the web of deception really deep. And usually when we're seeing something and the media especially is conveying something to it, usually the opposite of what they're telling us is the thing. So yeah, they're a very well-oiled system to get us from where we're at right now to a one world government digital passport.
Right.
You know,
That's my concern.
all of your worst fears, forced vaccinations, all of that. Of course, the beast system wants complete control over us. Right. At its core, it's parasitic. It can only feed on us. Without us and without the living, it dies like the vampire it is, right? Yeah. So it can't. And the only way to do that is for brave people to step up, to do the thing that they know is best in their heart, and to actually create a world, you know, alongside this world that's essentially it's collapsing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be grasping for power like they are. That's the sign of something that's desperate. So if we can create a world, run it parallel, no resistance, let it do its thing. Let it collapse. It doesn't matter. As we create a new world, that's the thing that's going to take over. That's the thing that'll live on. And as long as we're all looking 7 generations into the future and really treating everything that we do as not important in the sense of, oh, I'm so important, but in the sense of I was blessed with life. I'm going to live it, right?
I'm putting it together as what you're saying is that there's all these factors, right? And the trust by no means, I mean, you know, because, you know, my initial thing is, okay, is this safe? Is that, you know, and then you realize, well, nothing is. What you were saying earlier applies. And I think you've already answered the question, but yeah, thank you. So, you know, parallel society, your own tokens, our own money, our own land, our own security, our own, you know, sovereignty as much as possible, because I think those things are imminent. as well. Like you said, it can only go there.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And
And it's got to come from the heart.
Right.
It's got to come from the heart. If it doesn't come from the heart space, it's doomed, because AI will outthink any person out there who's focused on mind stuff and you know, focused on their brain and their thoughts and all of this stuff. The best possible thing you can do if you want the actual spirit that flows through everything to flow through you and think for you is check out. Give it the control panel. Let it do its thing. The body has infinite intelligence. So I think the soul stream's been hijacked by this thing, and it's being reflected into this 3D illusion, essentially, and then amplified by the parasitic matrix.
And would you agree that, I mean, I would say for myself that writing these things down actually bring them into the 4D. I mean, this is what I'm working on.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
It's
Why
like
do you
writing
think
things
that
down on paper is right, bringing things into the fourth dimension, which is my attempt. Again, I'm not all sure how. I'm no genius, but you know, I'm wanting to do better.
You're spelling it out. You're spelling it out. You're creating a spell, right? So if you really look at this, why do you think that most 8th graders, I would say the majority, don't have any kind of penmanship? They can't write in script because it's a way too powerful tool for the common man to have in their hands. So they've programmed that out of us. They've got everybody type, including myself. You know, when I write something down in my logbook, in my notebooks, my journals, whatever, or if I'm taking notes by hand, I don't care what it looks like. The thing that is amplified through it actually comes into fruition every time. If I could type a 100-page memo or memorandum, it doesn't matter if it's not done with my hand, or if at the bottom of it I haven't signed off on it, then it's not going to be the thing that I think it is.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. You have to use your living signature in your hand to be able to actually bring this stuff into the waking world.
Cool. Thank you. And I'm going to X out Wild has a question next. Thank you. Hey, Dennis, go ahead with your question. I'm done. If you can access your mic, like I guess everyone's having a problem. But feel free to unmute because I'm done with my question. If Dennis is next, I know that Moose is back, and I know Moose had a question as well earlier. I wasn't sure if that was answered, just to let you know.
Yeah, cool. No worries. Look, I'm wondering about like scanners and that at the airports. Now, I know that what they do there is not real good for you. Can you get around that when you have the trust?
Yes, but not easily. Not something where you simply give them documents and you walk through the gate rather than a scanner. It's something that you would absolutely need to send that off to headquarters, and probably the chief records inspection officer for whatever airline you were flying through. And then you need to connect them with the actual airport and the authorities that govern that airport to be able to put them on notice that you were traveling in such a capacity. And then you would have to have something that was different from the normal ID. So say you're traveling from Australia to the States, you got to go into the US Embassy in Australia. That you tell them, I don't have ID. I need a temporary ID. Now, once they issue that temporary ID, they might send you down the street, get your picture taken, all this stuff, make you go through some paperwork, but then they'll give you the temporary ID. And then once you get the temporary ID, you are technically on US soil through that embassy. But now you have travel documentation. Because if you wanted to, you can go to whomever you need to go to in that department to be able to extend that travel documentation to match the visa for your travel, as long as you have a valid reason to travel and so on. That valid reason could simply be that you've never seen the States and it's part of your mission, and your trust has, essentially set the grantor up and have and go through a kind of like a rite of passage and see all the national parks or something like that, right? It doesn't have to be specifically that. Something, though, you have to have some kind of reason. And if you have a valid reason and you go in there with a smile on your face and you just talk to people, and if you can laugh and make other people laugh, that's the power right there. That'll cut through all of that AI programming and all of the bureaucracy and all of that stuff that you're afraid of, right? So you just have to do it in the correct way, brother. That's very important. It's vital.
That's very interesting. Just one other thing, like, what about with I go somewhere, like, so I go over to the States there, and I want to bring some stuff back through customs. Do with that one.
Okay. So you want to bring some stuff back through customs. You've often heard, you know, if you travel to pretty much anywhere, say you try to, it depends, first of all, what are you trying to bring back? If you're trying to bring back something that is actually has more sentimental value than value that can be valuated through certificates, essentially, and treated as a security if needed, then you're much more likely to pass through there. Like you could pass through an airport with an heirloom that's worth $80,000, but if you have $30,000 in cash, it might be confiscated and you might never see it again, because now, you know, cash is essentially a form of a security, right? So if you have the same amount, 80,000 in gold, let's say, well, you need to do something to be able to get it from point A to point B. Now, everybody's got reserves. There's always places where you can go if you have enough money and you can get gold bars. So wait till you get on the other side. If you have to, you put it into a digital format, have the certificate held, travel, and then on the other side, liquidate it, turn it into the bars, right? That's the way that you really want to do it. Least resistance.
I've never done it before, but yeah, I'm just wondering about, like, say, yeah, because I haven't even asked, but I know people that have brought full drives and whatever from the States to Australia. Is there a way to get around the taxes of that? Because
Well,
it's a fee,
that's
right?
more toward what we were saying with tariffs. There's always a way to not get around taxes, right? Because we're never in the space where we're evading taxes or we're trying to do something to be able to not pay taxes. We're just doing our best to never create a taxable event ever again in our life. And while it's difficult, right, there are ways. And as long as you're thoughtful about what you're doing, there are definitely ways, right? So if you're structured correctly and you have not only the private side stuff to back you up, but the public side documentation also to be able to show that you can do what you're trying to do. And then as long as you put the correct entities on notice, well, criminal intent is trying to hide something. That's usually how it's established. So as long as you're putting people on notice, your intent was obviously not anything that was outside of, or would involve their jurisdiction at all. You just put people on notice, brother. Make sure your paperwork's right. If you have an idea, something that you want to do, make sure you're exacting with your vision. You have to be able to see yourself traveling through the airport, handing somebody something. They've already been put on notice. Now you're walking around the scanner. You're getting onto the plane. You're kind of giggling, laughing, right? Inside, the plane takes off, it lands. You do the same exact thing on the other end because you've already coordinated that. And then while you're at your hotel room on the other end, you're cracking up, going, oh my God, the system is absolutely absurd with its nonsense control. All you have to do is actually think through something and really think it through and see it through. And your vision can guide you, and if you don't know the tech stuff on the back end, that's why you're connected with us. We'll always, even if I don't know the answer right away, trust me, it's on my queue. I'm researching it. I've already jotted it down in a notebook. I'm seeing how I can get you from that point to that point and telling you everything that you need to do. Full process.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yes. All right. I see we have a couple hands up here. Ms. Moose, you can unmute your mic and feel free to share your question. Or if you can't unmute it for some reason, just type it into the chat box and someone from our team will be glad to read it out. Mr. Saul, I see you also have a question or your hand up. Rather.
Yeah, I do. It actually has to do with
I'm
one of our kids.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Saul. Unless you're going to lose your train of thought, brother. Miss Sarah was actually next on the queue.
Yeah, no worries. I'll wait.
Okay. Thanks, brother. Miss Sarah.
Hi, I was wondering, do you get a birth certificate for your children, or you don't have to, or how does that work?
You don't have to. Essentially, it depends on, like I say, the Quakers don't need to. right? And there are religions that absolutely have such an objection to this thing that's been created that they will refuse to, and they can stand on religious protections to be able to enforce that. But if you don't have a community behind you, and you don't have a well-established system, and you don't have those connections to be able to make sure that that operates the same way every time, then you would need some kind of trust documentation that would reflect your ability to do that. And if that is even something that you want to do, you know, I'm not ever telling anybody sign up for slavery. But what I do know is that at times that birth certificate can be very useful, and you can leverage it to your benefit. And if you don't have it, it can actually be destructive to some things that you want to do in this life. And you'd never want to, right?
Yeah.
So you never really want to set your children up where they're at a disadvantage right out the gate. What you want
No.
to do is protect them, right? And you want to make sure that you provide them with an option. Free will is the thing. Provide them with the option, you know, give them some kind of, ideally you could give them a private side entity through a trust, and, you know, and a network of people to support their dreams. That's probably the best thing that you could do for a child. And then
That makes
also
sense.
set them up with the public side thing and let it bleed. Tell them never, if you can help it, if you don't have to, don't worry about applying for credit. Don't worry about signing anything, you know, and signing up for anything. Ideally, you'll have a homestead somewhere. Each one of us does, right? That's the ideal. And
That
then we
would be
can
my
leverage
dream.
agricultural exemptions.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yes.
I was thinking, like, I was considering this for my daughter, but we just did it. We just got her one because I didn't want, like you said, you don't want to put them at a disadvantage, and most people are used to that. And
Right. And the other thing that is you should always be aware of, especially when it comes to children, is that whatever you do, they will reach an age where they will rebel against that. And you
yeah,
don't want to get caught in that trap, right? Where now you've
no,
created a slave essentially just because their rebellion propelled them in that way, and you set the framework up for them to do that. So it's always best to be prudent, to be cautious. If you don't know how something was created, you don't have any business dealing with it.
yeah. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Miss Moose, I think you had your hand up for a while, and then let's move on to Salt.
Hey, Yossi, it's
Yeah,
Janai.
yeah.
I think Moose is the same as Sarah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
So she's all
no
cow.
worries.
I mean, done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no worries. And Mr. Saul, thank you for being patient, brother.
Yeah, no worries. It's funny because Sarah had the same question as I did about getting a birth certificate because one of our kids we didn't get the birth certificate, and I guess the concern that we have as a family is, you know, you hear all these stories about how kids are taken away, and then they link it back to your children are in our jurisdiction, and so then they feel that they have a right to, for whatever circumstance, take your child from you. And so, is it
Correct.
true that because you have that birth certificate, or that, you know, you have a birth certificate, a social security card, doesn't that put your children in their jurisdiction?
Only if you haven't already defined some kind of entity and looked out after them, right? So ideally, you set something up where you know your trust, your wife's trust, that those two come together, form a private arrangement. Through that private arrangement, you've essentially leveraged her biological material, your input to that, which is your seed, planted something, grows, and as it grows, you want it to be the thing that all of your dreams benefit from. You want to make sure that all of your life fertilizes the soil around that tree. So because of that thing right there, that's your religion at that point. You live in service to your children. Now, whenever there's documentation that should come up, God forbid something should come, right? Now you have some kind of leverage point where you can say, I get that there was a public side entity that was created and that you think you have jurisdiction, but that public side entity has never operated in the capacity of being that public entity because it's always been this. And you have something else that you can point to that has more, not only does it supersede those contracts because it's based on your contract with your creator, and that's what came through, and that's what you and your wife created together. But it also gives it an extra oomph if you do a little bit of birth certificate correction, a little tiny bit of record corrections. It doesn't have to be anything big. It can just be they issue the birth certificate, you go in on the back end and you say, okay, this birth certificate, I'm going into the Department of Vital Statistics in this county that my baby was born in, and I need to make a simple adjustment. Our ancestors never spelled their last name like you're spelling it on this certificate right here. There was always an accent on blah. There was always a syllable adjustment here so that it could be read correctly. Those types of things, right? Just simple connotation errors can make it so that that original root birth certificate can become null and void for all intents and purposes of them enforcing on an implied contract against you, where you have superior paperwork. That's the situation that you need to get yourself into if you really want to protect your children. You want to make sure you have superior paperwork, and that paperwork leverages religious protections specifically, and that you do it in such a way where there's no questioning that you have first in line access to any kind of interest in that child's welfare.
So let me just say back to you what I think you said. Is that okay? Just to make sure hello.
Please,
Did I hit it? Okay. Could you stop? They're saying that the microphone is noisy, but it's because she's banging on everything. Okay, so then what you're saying is that because we have constitutionally protected rights, right? And one of the big ones is freedom of religion. If you having control over the biological material that you create as part of your religious standing, then that means that supersedes any contract, because first it's natural law, then it's man's law, or whatever.
That's right. Man's law is always built upon natural law, and at its best, it can reflect natural law and nothing else, right? So even though you have this contract there, and even though let's say, right, the Constitution doesn't grant us these permissions. These permissions were granted by our Creator, who we live in service to. So because of that, the Constitution can at best be a reflection of this permission, the terms and conditions that were already granted to us. It can only put it on paper. Like, look at the Constitution itself. In order to form a more perfect union, right, in the Declaration of Independence, like, something already existed, and now it needs to be on paper. And the thing that existed was church-going people and farmers. So any laws that they made, thing that existed was church-going people, farmers, and slave owners. So any laws that were created from that point always will have loopholes in order to benefit those types of things. So whether it's a religion, or it's a agricultural exemption that you're pulling on, or you've been able to dissect how chattel are chattelized and securitized, and then insurance contracts are put on their head, and then you do it on the private side to be able to do something with your own wealth to amplify it. Same thing they're doing. That right there is, just look at the root. Look at whatever the thing is doing to exploit you, just reverse engineer it, and then you do it back in the inverse way. That's the biggest trade secret right there, brother. Carter, if you can cut that from the conversation, I'd appreciate it.
That's funny. But I get it, because it's like any type of polarity. You got to fight hate with love in order to and it's just that it's a natural balance of the universe, right? So whatever they're trying to do, in order for you to really be able to understand how to balance it out, you have to understand it's polar opposite
And inverse. It's more like flip the script and then invert it, and the black becomes white, the white becomes black. Now look at it again, and then if needed, pray on it for real. Like, if needed, sit down in meditation, clear your mind, and have a notepad in front of you, and really tune into what the gut tells you and what the heart tells you. That's the best way forward with this kind of stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was very
absolutely, brother. We appreciate you too. Moose, what's going on? Are you unable to mute your mic? Unmute it. Look at the chat. Okay. Can somebody field that question right there? Okay. I will do it. Let's see.
I'm looking back here, trying to find what which one we referred to. There's a lot going on in the chat.
I think Moose is just saying, look at Jennifer and is it Jiggy? Jiggy's, they have some stuff to say.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Jennifer, let's see, let's go up just a little bit. I won't go in as an agent, draft an affidavit that I'm working on with a friend, look at the filing department, complaint against the judge. Talking about going into court, Yossi. Jiggy said
Right.
U.S. citizens are not afforded constitutional protections. Jennifer said, so the affidavit you were
Only
talking
if they put only if they put the Constitution on the record. If you put the whole Constitution on the record and you come in essentially special appearance, and then your whole objective is to get the judge in their chambers, boom, Constitution's on record. They'll even take the robe off for you because they know the next thing that's coming after that is probably that you're calling in the oath of office, and that's never going to line up. So yeah, there definitely are ways through that maze right there. God forbid any of us would be in that maze, but if you are, we can definitely talk on the back end.
So what would be, so earlier Jiggy had said something about not being able to go in as agent for the principal if you don't have certain things in place as far as being like, you know, a living woman and like putting them on notice that you are not a corporate identity.
Yeah, it's simple affidavit, and then corporate disclosure statement. Okay, your corporate disclosure statement is going to be enough to be able to prompt a corporate disclosure statement from them. And once you see who they really are, then you'll kind of have a better idea about how to defend yourself and how to attack them should damages be needed.
So that affidavit that I need to do, where does that need to get filed?
That's something that you'll include with all of your documentation. And that's something that if you go in as under special appearance, and that's why you're there. Now, in a case where CPS is involved, there are contracts at play. There are wedding signatures somewhere, and they're leveraging those signatures in order to be able to, you know, do all of the mischief that they do. So the thing that you need to do is not necessarily rescind those signatures. You need to be able to redefine them and create some kind of context for the experience that they have communicating with you as a living woman. All of your affidavits should lean heavy on the fact that you're living and that you, as a living woman, you're coming in there, right? Now, the best that the other side can do is hire a lawyer and flex through a dead entity or an artificial entity that has never lived and breathed.
So I had conversations, I know you had sent me over to Annie, and she and I had some conversations about that affidavit being filed, and she was saying that it needs to be filed with whoever the new attorney is, the Trump appointed attorney for Michigan, along with that federal complaint. But she's saying that it would not get filed in the circuit court where my case is, that's kind of like a completely separate thing.
Yep, completely separate. You have to make sure you're in the proper jurisdiction. U.S. Attorney General first, right? That's the first on the letterhead. From there, there's a chief record corrections officer in the court itself that you're working through. That court needs to know that that affidavit is who you are. Those are your two major points of contact.
Sorry, I've got like so many windows open and I've got my book next to me and I'm writing notes. I'm all over the place right now.
There's no reason to be sorry for that one. You've got it. You know, did that question have a little bit more substance to it, or was that where I cut you off, Mr. Oz? Was that it, or do you want to keep on going?
No, I think Jennifer kind of came in and reiterated.
Okay.
Jiggy, you mentioned something about Brandon Joe. While he doesn't agree with everything, he does have some solid information on creating the separation between you, the living woman, and the legal name entity. And yeah, that is, I would agree with that, Jiggy.
Yeah. He has solid information. You know, each one of us needs to stay in our lane. Where we differentiate and where, you know, I've been out there in the Brandon Joe Williams forum. We've had people send us information that it's rough. It's rough because unless in this space, if you don't couple the heart with the brain, you're going to misguide people. You're going to mislead them. And if you're treating people as experiments, somebody will pay the price. You know, eventually, hopefully the person who is treating others as an experiment, but most likely the experiment will will be the first one to receive that blowback on that. So we never like to set people up in a situation where you're trying to get something for free and tapping into the accounts receivable side of the transmitting utility without knowing what's on the books. If you want to do something like that, there is a process for doing it. It seems as if the debt validation part is just people just completely skip over that one, just assuming essentially that the debt exists and then going in and trying their best in order, with mixed results every single time to be able to leverage that for free things. None of us are a beneficiary, guys, as much as we'd like to dream that into being, unless we've been given a certificate that we're a beneficiary of a trust somewhere. And unless you can justify that birth certificate is that by proving through some kind of record that it exists and that's its sole function, then there is no reason for any of us to think that we should be getting something for nothing because something was created without our consent. You see what I'm saying? Just take everything with a grain of salt and also look to the people who are giving you information. If they're telling you tune in, you have your own inner bullshit detector. If they're for some reason telling you maybe, take 24 hours, think about this, be a little bit more wise, be prudent with your approach. Don't be speculative. Make sure that you have everything written down. That's who you want to really work with. Anybody out there who's like that. The people who you don't want to work with are people who are giving you information and information overload because maybe they're, one or two Adderalls deep into the day and they just decide, it's best that all of this information that I'm digesting, that I just release it to people and tell them, do some crazy shit with it because I'd like to see how it works out. And I don't want to do it myself. That's the thing that you need to really be wary of.
Looks like Janai has her hand up. Go ahead, Janai.
Hi, guys. Thank you. Kind of an off question. Being that my father's name is fudged on my birth certificate, or let's just say theoretically, if a person's father, Paris Ocean, is not really my father's name on my birth certificate and I go to amend that, can my mother get in trouble for lying? Question mark on that potentially?
Not at all.
You know.
Well, ignorance is no excuse for not grokking the law, right? At the same time, we're talking about an implied contract that happened where your mother was never, before she got a birth certificate for you, she wasn't given a pamphlet. Read through the terms and conditions. This is what we're creating with your signature. So that never happened. It was just, here's 2 footprints on it. This is how everybody does it. Sign it down. The fact that there's a name discrepancy and record corrections is probably the most sophisticated process because it actually adjusts the record in a way that it's a monologue. It's not a dialogue. It's not a back and forth. Like, will you give me permission for this? Or I'm filing this because I need some kind of an exemption or yada, yada, right? It's something that's very detailed. Look, I know me better than anybody. I know my family tree better than anybody. My grandfather never spelled his name like this. That's not how.
Thank you.
You see what I'm saying? That's never how it happened in my family. So I don't know what kind of records you have on me, but they all need to be adjusted. Now, from that root record correction, you could do damage if you wanted to. But if you're a good person, which we really try to screen the calls, and you definitely are, we feel you.
I'm not interested
You can
in
do
what
a lot
I can
of good.
get. Right. I'm not
Yeah, you
interested
can
in what I can get. I'm interested in having Wayne Vieira on, my real father on my birth certificate. Just for
Absolutely.
the truth's sake.
Absolutely. And listen, should through that process you gain freedom and be able to compound a penny into $1 over and over and over again, we know for certain that you're also in it to give. It's not about what you can get, like you said. It's about what you can give. That's all that matters in this world, is the love that we can generate in our hearts. And I'll tell you guys right now, as a warning, and clip it up if you need to. Anybody who's taking any kind of pills or powders and that they don't really genuinely care about you, they care about them. And that's rough for a lot of people to hear because, like Tony mentioned, we are in a world that creates ADD children, and that's the medicine, or rather the drug that's been prescribed as a Band-Aid for that. But that Band-Aid puts a Band-Aid right over that heart, and it makes it so that you can't feel it anymore eventually. So, check in. If your guru is popping pills, maybe take it with a grain of amphetamine salt.
Great advice. Thanks.
Yes, Adderall is a prescription meth. Give it to children. Interesting stuff. Moose has a hand up, but I don't think they can unmute yet. Jiggy is talking about being a sovereign, and I wanted to know your thoughts on that. And can someone help me with the unmuting, please? Moose, real quick on the unmuting. If you click the screen, just click anywhere on the screen in the where you see people's names and such. A bar at the bottom should pop up. On the left-hand side of that bar is a microphone with a line through it. Try clicking that. If that does not work, hop off, end the call, exit out, okay? And then just go to your Google or Brave or whatever you use for internet, and then type in TrustLiveChat.com. And you should be good to go. Oh, it's not working. Try an incognito tab. Carter is going to screen share and show you what to do here. We'll try to get you set right. So you hit if you're on a computer, you open incognito tab, top right bars, and trust chat, allow access, and then you should be able to hop right back in. So if you want to try it with a new tab, or if you're on your phone, you can do the same thing, or tablet, same thing. All right, Carter, go back to. So yeah, Moose, if that doesn't work, I'm unsure. Yeah, permissions, Jiggy. If you clicked on the link through Facebook, because we don't all have our Facebook microphone on, most of us usually keep that off. If you click on it through Facebook and it goes over to Brave. If you don't have your Facebook microphone permission on, it's not going to work. So you have to enter the Brave chat just straight through the browser. Don't click on it through Facebook. So open up a new window or a new tab, not through Facebook, and then type in TrustLiveChat.com and you should be fine. If that doesn't work, you utilize an incognito tab, but it
Awesome.
should work.
That should work, guys. And we're talking about sovereignty right now. And being sovereign, I'm glad Jiggy put it that way, and I think he put it that way intentionally. Sovereign citizen is the nomenclature that's normally used, which is an oxymoron. It's counterintuitive. You can't be sovereign and be a citizen at the same time, right? At the same time, I think the sovereign movement is on the right track. People are really looking for freedom. We're looking for a genuine liberation cosmology where we can tap into it, and it can be something that's a guiding light, like that lighthouse on our path where, as long as we can see the lighthouse, we're good to go. We don't care where the path goes. At the same time, be wary of sovereignty in the sense of needing to ask for permission or do anything for it. Now, the one thing and the only thing you really need to do for sovereignty is be able to reflect it in writing, have some kind of way of interacting with the public in case somebody questions you on it, and then a system, a well dialed in system to be able to disengage from that matrix. And if you have that, you're good to go. You can be sovereign as much as you want. Same thing with a loyal title. You want a loyal title to land? You're not going to get it in a courtroom. The only way you'll get it is by, if you do get it in a courtroom, it's because you've settled some kind of alleged debt with a lender in the courtroom where you've come in as a plaintiff and you've been able to establish some kind of, let's say, in rem interest in your estate and in your land with all of the property on it and all of the work you've put into it and so on. That's one way to balance the books. Once the books are balanced, though, you can get that allodial title, which is the same thing as having sovereignty over your land, just through having a non-taxable entity hold that land. If that's the case, then it can never be taken away from you. That's the modern day equivalent of an allodial title or true sovereignty, because without land, a man cannot be sovereign. A woman cannot be sovereign. You can't be renting from somebody and claim sovereignty. I don't care how many, how many cool remedies you have up your sleeve.
Drippy, were you able to unmute?
Yeah.
There we go. We can hear you, brother. Go ahead.
So going back onto reasons why I was choosing sovereign, like you said, you can't do the whole rent thing or pay rent as a sovereign. So my end game entails creating a community on public land in the mountains, where that was why I was leaning towards sovereignty. Because if there is ways to do it different, that's cool. But I'm just explaining. So what I
Like
plan to
BLM land?
do, like public land, like as in it's so not Indian land. They have to allot public land to the people. They can't own
Right. Are
100.
you talking about through the Department of Forestry or BLM land?
Sort of. So there's very few state parks that you can still do that in, but it's like, for example, in West Virginia in the mountains, it's kind of like not to use the term the people living in the hills, Um, it's they don't file anything, but that's because a lot of them are born without a birth certificate or anything and are off the record. That is a little different, but anyway, my point is like, if doing it this way, are you still able to build on public land and be protected and left alone?
Oh, absolutely. We lean really heavy on not only the grant side, but also government contracting as needed through the
Okay.
public side of the private entity, right? So you can essentially enter into, listen, the U.S. Department of Agriculture is giving out land. If you can find land in the right location, go ahead, put them on notice with the right paperwork, and you can get that land, and then you can build upon it, use it to evaluate your estate and your trust, and then leverage it to be able to get more land. I
Right.
mean, if
There's
rinse repeat over and
unincorporated
over and over again.
communities who I think they've probably done it similar to the way y'all have, but there's places already, not just West Virginia, other places as well, who have done that. I'll bet probably a little bit different way, but they're there. So I know it's attainable. I just want just doing it the correct way to where, I don't want Ruby
Well,
Ridge type stuff to happen.
Right. And here's the thing: you don't ever want to go requesting such land if the land can be taxed. Request it as an entity that has a tax exception,
Right.
because from that point, right, they know for certain that if you're requesting it for the specific parameters that you've discussed in that request, that they can grant you that, and that land is just as protected as if they were protecting it themselves.
So one more detail would be like, so you're asking permission. Can they tell you no?
Well, they can tell you no. If you wanted, you could post up on it. You could
That's
really
kind
make
of
it stink.
That's kind of where I was going to do regardless, and why I was going to lean on sovereignty, because as a sovereign, they can't, if they were to do something, that's big trouble for them. But it sounds like it's kind of the similar with this way as well. It's just the whole point is
this
just
way,
being protected to create what I want to create, all on land that I have the right to do so anyway. You get what I'm saying?
Right. You always have that right to do so, brother. That they're not taking that away from you. They can't take that away from you. The only thing is, if you the quality of land, then there you go. Make sure that you have all the documentation in place, and that they know who you are, and that you've put them on notice. If you put them on notice, they're not coming for the land. If you don't put them on notice and you do it hostilely, probably you're going to get somebody knocking on your cabin door.
Right.
The Bundys is a case that you'd look at there. I mean, they were on BLM land.
Mr. Jiggy.
Yeah, I got the microphone. How you doing?
Good deal, brother. Welcome.
That's about all I had right there. I just wanted to ask that because that's something that's inherent in what I'm doing, But
Are you the one that about the sovereign? What I thought about sovereignty?
yes, that's kind of what my whole discussion has been, is like doing what they're doing. The differences in what's going to be able to protect me the most and allow me to create, in the middle of the forest.
Well, yeah, just to speak on sovereignty, there's lots of ways to look at it. To be a true sovereign in this life, as like you need to have fortifications, be able to defend yourself, be able to feed all of the people who are living in and around your castle. So as far as being like we can be sovereign minded, and we can have sovereign in managing our affairs. I mean, even we're here under trust with the creator. The creator is sovereign. So that's a tricky kind of thing. You know what I mean? So like you're saying, if you're going to go on public land or this land, you know, that the U.S. government has claimed, and it's, you know, annexed into another jurisdiction or another commercial realm. Actually, you know, they don't own the land. They utilize an overlay map or grid to trick you or to trick us into thinking they own the land. You're gonna, I don't really, to me, that's, can you defend yourself and repel the U.S. forces? Because that's, to be a sovereign, that's what you'd need to do.
Being a sovereign on land like a national forest is not, when
Hey,
I say
my love. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you.
when I say public land, I'm not talking about public side like in the city or a state owned. I'm talking about, it's usually in most states, it's national forests that are allotted to public in terms of non-government owned land.
No, it's public land, and that land is managed and taken care of by the Department of the Interior. So it's not, it's public land for public usage, for quote unquote free usage, but you'll have problems if you go into a national forest and you start building structures.
Fortunately, the place that I'm
much
planning to
more
build is
sound,
not
a
a
much
national
more sound,
forest.
a much more sound approach, brother, is look for some owner financed land and get yourself in the door. That really, you'll figure it out from there.
That's the problem, is a lot of the places where I'm planning on going aren't. So for example, people, like I said, I've scoped a lot of this, and I've been on this for about, I think someone else said about 10 years as well. I just haven't ever been able in a position to do anything. It hasn't been time. But there are they're called unincorporated communities. And it's entire communities that are not tied to, they're their own entity. You get what I mean? So
Yeah,
they've done this on land that has not been.
So now you're getting,
They didn't buy the land.
And
They didn't do
they're
anything like that.
usually in the middle of the desert.
right.
In this
And,
instance, they're in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains.
There you go.
in land, in areas that may not be seen as valuable for usage or easily used, then the tolerance will be more for you. You know, I mean, I've lived for 6 weeks at Slab City, you know, Southern California, which is near Afghanistan, which is a independent like micronation.
Right.
And I've been to a micronation in Tennessee and another one. If they don't want you there, they think they're going to use, you know, might makes right. We still live in a world where it's, I don't agree with this, but might, it's just, that's what will happen.
Do I have sound? I'm
Sorry.
confused. My interface is like confused whether I have sound or not. Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Yay! That's all I needed to know. I'm here and I'm listening. That's all. Thank you.
So my thoughts on that is, if they did try to use force, that's where I'm kind of digging down in terms of the details of protection, because as a sovereign, in the sovereign note, it's like, as a sovereign nation or entity, them doing that would be an attack on a sovereign entity without provocation, because you got it.
When have you noticed?
Libya,
but when, brother?
Libya,
When haven't
Iraq,
they exploited that? Right? When
I mean,
haven't they done that?
no.
When
And
haven't they
I'm
had
not
to?
saying that it can't happen. All I'm saying is that
Right.
if they were to do so, if they chose to do it anyway, well, that's obviously on record an attack. You can take that, and then they owe you damages to the attack on the sovereign state. If I'm not
Very,
mistaken.
very difficult to enforce unless you're going to the unless you're going to some higher authority, brother. Like
Right.
in reality, though, this nation state that you're thinking could possibly attack you at some point is attacked many other nation states that claim sovereignty without batting an eye and no consequence.
Right.
Right.
Replacing the whole financial construct, you know, I mean, like with actual tangible, like starting with gold reserve communities and things like that.
Replace it how? Like in within your own like have an incorporated city and have your own money, or are you speaking like because
No, not my own, like because whenever everything I create would be a network, it's part of, it would be part of a network. It's not, I don't want to just go create some hidden community in the mountains. I want to be networked with everywhere, everybody everywhere. And the point would be to have all these communities share resources and network to create structures to replace the current systems because they don't.
And that those, yes, brother, those are the trust structures that is the topic of this conversation right now.
Right.
And that's how you get that leverage point. It's how you get that valuation point that can go horizontal, vertical, diagonal, etc.
But like I said, it all goes down to what I'm just concerned about protection on whenever I go to create. Again, it's just that.
Are you saying you're wanting to create a structure that replaces the global system of economy?
Well,
No.
I mean, essentially that is what we're talking about here, is a structure that replaces it, right? Runs concurrent with it and parallel with it without resistance, and allows us to build something that's greater than it, so that as it falls off by its own weight, the thing that's been created already is there to replace everything. No worries.
This is
But
exactly
we don't
where my
have to go
mind
up against it to do that, right?
Well, yeah, I mean that language I think is more aligned with the way Yossi said it is, running concurrent, existing side by side, coexistence. You know what I mean? Like all parts of the waveform have to exist for any part of the waveform to be. So if you're railing against something, you're gonna come up against resistance.
Yeah,
So,
if you meet it with destruction, it'll only be destruction. If you meet it with creation, then it'll flourish.
right. So the idea of like I've looked at the micronations. I've looked at getting the land deeds and having those types of entities. I've got a friend who is a venture capitalist that he's got he's an amazing guy, and he's got children hospitals in Bangladesh where he's from, and he does amazing things already. But he's got a whole city plan, like a city of the future that he wants to build, where there's no citizenship, and it's a city for education where with no national affiliation, where all people from all nations can come. And his idea is that generals from other nations can come, and it's the soldiers that in that situation, his idea is we'd have communication through industries and through the people that actually enact and operate and allow make those industries work, war or schooling or what have you. And the people who are actually the labor and the energy that make those systems work, if they can come together in a singular place without the controlling their thoughts about it or obfuscating things, once the troops communicate, if your general's full of shit, eventually the troops are going to realize that the general's full of shit. So I mean, and he's got some great ideas about building the city. It's an unincorporated type situation, but then again, you're going to need to, for what you're saying, I agree with that. Multiple communities linked together, we create a body. The cities are built that replicate a human. There's a heartbeat downtown. That's why there's one ways around the courthouses, because it's bringing blood to and from the heart of the city, which is the courthouse typically. So this is why cities are structured this way. It's so, and then we build a bigger living entity with creating systems to other communities, roads and thoroughfares that bring blood and life, oxygen to and from these other heart centers. But I think for what you're saying, micronations is a viable option, and the land deeds, the land patents rather, and those types of things would be the way I would want to go. And it always approach it as peace, and also this humility, knowing that you don't have directed energy weapons mounted to planes. And it's just, if they want something, they'll take it. Paradise, California. Look at Hollywood. Look at Lahaina. So you've got to understand how to protect yourself, and also how to protect yourself against things like eminent domain. And I would also do the research to select land or locations that are are not already queued up for any of their plans. You know, like I wouldn't try to get land where the high rail system's trying to be put in, you know, high speed rail, or you get what I'm saying? So,
Yeah, it's definitely none of that. It's it's out of the way, and there's no resources that they could possibly want.
yeah, I'm just speaking in general, you know,
Right.
in general terms, in creating these structures, you know, and so, you know, and then also you said something about a water source. You know, there's all kinds of regulations and laws about that they'll come in and use, like if you divert water and things like that, like they claim the water, like what we're, you know.
It wouldn't. So my not that it's necessarily important right now. My plans weren't total water diversion. You know, it would just be to tap in.
That's water diversion.
Is it even if
Yeah,
you're? I thought you meant just like as in like diverting the whole stream per se.
Cannabis in the mountains, you put a pump or you divert water out of a stream, even just one pipe, like and you're irrigating your plants out of a stream.
They consider that water diversion. Yeah.
That is
There would assumably be protections, some kind of agricultural ways to go about it, right? Like,
yeah, agricultural and some kind of agricultural exemption is what you're looking for.
Right.
You need but you need paperwork for that, right?
Of course.
And once you get that though, and once you get that agricultural exemption, you can drive around. No need for a license. No need for any plates. You know, you'll get the one set of plates that say farm use only. And then should you need to travel, say 4,000 miles away, simply make an agreement with a co-op that's 4,000 miles away. Tell them that you're bringing them some goodies. It doesn't need to be anything special.
Yeah, see,
right?
Tyler, we will bring
through that,
goats.
right? And then, right, exactly. And then
we can
transport you know,
to clear out someone else's land. That was something I was telling him about yesterday. Was that if we just collected a herd of goats, we could use those goats to rent out and clear out acres for
correct.
To feed
Now,
goats.
now, listen, sister.
Yeah.
It does not matter if you're traveling in a pickup truck pulling a trailer full of goats or you're traveling in your Ferrari, because the trust entity that's up at the top that dictates the terms and conditions of that arrangement and has those contracts with those co-ops, or at least some kind of email that's been exchanged back and forth as proof that it doesn't matter. Farm use only. You're always just traveling around from one co-op to another or one connection point in your web in order to be able to establish connections that can further your dream of letting goats run free on land and clearing it.
Even if it's apart from the topic of goats, right? Even if it's maybe
How could it be apart from the topic of goats?
My name's Goat Feet. Fuck off. So if it was on the topic of something else related to knowledge of some sort that would assist somebody else in their process of a farm, you know, agricultural keeping, if it was a service in my brain that doesn't exist anywhere else that I'm providing.
Correct. That's where it usually comes from. That's where it usually comes from.
I know.
Right?
Okay, I just had to say it out loud. Thank you.
Yeah. It could be something as simple as you sit down with somebody and you help them meditate and you put a notepad in front of them. It could be whatever it is that you want to offer to others to be able to advance the dream. That thing alone, that's the reason why you're traveling. You're never going to be driving ever again once you get set up correctly.
To provide some level of comedic, maybe not comedic relief, but comedic addition to the situation, could I potentially, and this is really just the idea of a joke, but for like, I don't know, I had the idea of goat enrichment. Like, could I be a goat comedian and go places and make?
Of course you can. Of course you can. You have a connection to goats, and the goats, the goat spirit, and it's listen, and the goat spirit,
make people happy. And if I like put a situation in that would allow me to maybe like
you got it.
Take notes on what would make goats happy.
Please though, you can establish an entire religion around just making goats happy.
You
Okay.
well, no man may
Gee,
question another man's divinity. Maxim of law. No man may question it. So
Yep.
you can call yourself whatever you want. You can. I have a friend that calls himself the Bee King. You know, I mean, it's legally
listen,
against
I'm
to.
sorry. The Bee King. He's
Yep. Because
yeah,
what are the goats gonna eat if it
yeah,
weren't for the Bee King?
and the meadow of the Bee King is where the goats feast. The goats
There you
feast
go.
in the meadow of the Bee King. I
Yeah.
do. It's a thing I
So
have. I wear a
yeah, so
ring
And
that ag life
go
is
ahead.
establish my marriage to the Bee King. What does that mean? Who is the Bee King? There's so many.
Well,
My
you'd
point.
have to define that. That's
No,
essentially what Jiggy's saying is that there are exemptions in place. There are fundamental principles at place that
yeah.
protect you from all of this bullshit nonsense that people spend most of their day worrying about.
Right. So all the hypotheticals are possible, but it's not possible if you don't have the principles. If you don't have the foundation, then all of the hypothetical or all the possibilities are not going to be open to you because you don't have a foundation. You can't build your castle on sand. You need a
right. That's
foundation.
where I'm
And
at.
so
That's where I'm at.
you've got to be principled. And so you have to learn the principles. And then once you learn the principles, then you paint your painting. Like, once you learn what colors make the foreground come forward and what colors do this and how this brushstroke does that, you learn the principles of painting, and then you go paint.
Right.
It's the same. We're doing the same thing. We're doing the
Yeah.
same thing, but we're doing it with law. So, the maxims of law will open up your mind quite a bit, and it'll show, for instance, like I said, no man may question another man's divinity. So if someone approaches me and asks me to identify myself, if I say I'm God, they can't question it. They'll question it, right? But like they can't tell me that I'm a legal name. They can't tell me that I'm the identification card. Fraud brought to light renders all contracts null and void. Ignorance of the law is no defense. And so when I'm no longer ignorant of the law and I know the law so I can identify their fraud and bring it to light, they no longer have defense in perpetrating it against me. Now they're liable to be upheld to their own code of law that they are sworn to and bound by, that I am not.
Boom. Yep, they're getting a fee schedule is what that means.
Right. And so that's just one example about how the maxims of law will open up your mind. It'll open up the way that you see things, and your strategies will change because you'll have more
Gosh,
clarity.
let's say as empowering as this entire thing has been, as empowering as it's been, it also provides so much pressure on myself to understand and learn.
Yeah.
Well, it gets
and I would
simpler.
say,
Ironically, it gets simple as you go into this private side. It gets more simple, not more complex. Anything that's getting more complex and it's obfuscating the truth is something that you want to avoid. But anything that gets simpler and obviates the truth through bullshit, through exposing the bullshit, that's your path right there.
Doing whatever I'm
Right.
doing is
So learning the principles is learning principles of law is simplifying law, which is also decoding the legality. Legality is not law. Law is agreements, contract. Law is land, air, water. Law is nature. Legality is English law is legality. Okay, so you've got to, once you learn the principles, you start peeling back these layers of obfuscation and layers of confusion. And once you know the principles, now you can call bullshit on bullshit laws because you know that those laws that they're throwing in your face don't adhere to the principles. So the learning and the knowledge is the foundation, which allows you to simplify this. And so it's like, first of all, we're waking up to, hey, we were born into slavery and that we are entrapped and it's a reverse trust scam and we can't, all these things, and we think we have to do this and we have to do that, and then we start coming to that, and then we start telling our friends about it, and they have 95% of them are like, you're bonkers. People will argue with you, and then you get confused because it's a big shocking experience coming to these awarenesses. And then you got to come out of the haystack. Like, we're in the haystack, and you got to you got to basically find the needles in the haystack and get rid of the hay. And so it is very overwhelming, but like the best thing you can do is read and study and learn the principles, learn the
I
maxims,
would I would
learn
like to request any and all from anybody and everybody resources sent in text and directly so that I can, instead of reporting back to the recorded space casts, have direct source material to
I mean,
study.
We will
upon.
drop a list of resources on the back end. It will be part of our website within a week.
yeah, I've
Nice.
shared a couple
And,
links.
and
Also,
Jiggy,
aside
if you'd like
from
to contribute to that process, brother, we'd really appreciate it.
Sure.
yeah,
I've
100%.
Yep,
shared a
load us
couple
up.
links in the chat in this conversation. I would recommend, you're not going to find anyone who has material out there that has all the straight truth. You're going to have to like even discern from the people who are teaching, because almost no one has all the answers. Like, and most of the people that I know that do have perfected, or they perfected a system, they kind of stay to themselves and they kind of just keep it private, and they just, the more, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah,
it's
exactly. I do.
the people out teaching and selling and doing those kinds of things. I have paid for some seminars. I have I have made donations for some for some education from like my trust mentor. um but it's very rare, and it's very rare that there are people of quality that are, and integrity, that you can extend yourself to in that way. So there's
Yeah.
avoid the gatekeepers, but I would encourage you to even just do your own, do your own, what do I want to call it? Searches. Do your own Easter egg hunt, and explore and type in the topics that you want to learn about, and review some people, listen to somebody talk for a little bit, and if it's not vibing, like go to the next thing, or ask other people that you're studying with, like who are you watching, what are you studying right now, like what have you come across. If people haven't done it for themselves, and they then they're probably not going to want to listen to them. Like you said earlier,
Yep.
Brandon,
Yep.
Joe is a great,
Demonstrable, actionable, repeatable results is what you're looking for.
and
My wife and I, we had a dream. We're going to live on a homestead. I'm talking to you from that homestead.
right.
I've got my office here. I'm looking out over the Mark Twain National Forest. It's flipping beautiful. There is a process to get you guys to your dream, I promise you. And all you have to do is really align with it. Once you align with it, it finds you. The thing that's really tripping most people up is, I recognize, like Jiggy was saying, you do have to do all of your research, and please tune in with your gut, tune in with the inner bullshit detector. As soon as those sirens start going off, respect them, respect that, right? And always make sure that the heart. Go
And you
ahead.
don't have to disconnect right
Yep.
away.
I'm aware there's a little bit of a lag, so when I speak and then it keeps going, I gotta stop and like, wait, there's
Yeah.
a delay here.
Vet your gurus. Vet them.
Vet
See that
everything.
Vet them. Vet them. If they're doing the thing that
verify
they practice, then that's the one that you want to go to, And then once you find the answer, go ahead. But listen, once you find the answers, don't stop looking. Once you find something that works, the worst thing that you can do is continue down the rabbit hole. The best thing you can do is a rinse repeat process where you
I
keep
think that's
doing the
where
thing that works.
that's where I'm at with being in a situation where these things are being expressed and communicated and kind of worked out and explained in a way that maybe I don't quite understand just yet.
You will, though. Like Jiggy said, they're based on core fundamental principles, and those principles, once you really grok them, once you get them on some kind of an intuitive level that matches the thing that your brain can resonate with, from that point, you've got the thing that you need. Now just dial in those principles, make them as simple as possible, put them into everyday, like I said, actionable, demonstrable, repeatable results. That's what we're looking for, guys. And as we go through the process, know that you're going to be in a loop. You're going to continue to refine your process. You will continue to make errors and, quote unquote, sin, right? You will have these errors, these things that come up, right? These things that come up constantly over and over and over again until you learn from them. And then once you learn from them, don't keep needing to learn from it. Just take it, run with it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I'm kind of like, I want to do the whole thing. I want to do all the things, So you're right that, if you keep looking, you could become more confused. And,
Yeah.
if you find something, because everybody's saying slightly different things and everyone has their own way of using the language and their own comprehension and understanding of language and definitions. And, this is one of the reasons, in English, right? English is the language of the Angles, Anglish, which is also
Yeah,
the
It's a
so
business.
much.
It's a
it's also
business
the
language
language
at
Thank
best.
of
you,
the
Yep, it's a
Sterling.
Angles.
business language.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
And it's the language of the angels, right? So it's the fallen. Like, if you want to get into spiritual education, we're dealing with, let us go down and then divide the tongues. And this is why in court you've got to define every word that's being used. This is why when you have a matter brought against you, you can require the court and the attorney, you can require them to define every word in the document, to clarify, so you have proper legal understanding about what they're saying, because every word has, so many different definitions.
And those definitions definitely need to be put on some kind of record. Otherwise, they won't even acknowledge them. Real quick, guys, I see that Moose continues to have trouble unmuting her microphone or speaking. There
I've
you
got
go.
them sorted. Thank you. Yes, but Janai says that she needs everybody who's not talking to please mute their mic. Check the chat every once in a while, and that's
Oh,
all.
my bad.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, thank you, Moose. That was a while ago, but I would appreciate, because that's sort of the beginning rules, as it were, the rules that we try to keep, just because it makes it so much easier. I wasn't hearing Jiggy earlier, and when everyone's done, I do have a question, but please carry on.
Yeah, I kind of got sidetracked from what we were going
Sorry,
on.
brother.
No
Sorry,
worries.
I keep seeing these texts pop up.
It's a group
Getting
chat.
the notifications.
So yeah, if you want to get into the spiritual edification, we're actually dealing with let us go down and divide the tongues, and that's separation. And this comes back to you claiming your divinity. We are the divine definers of everything that we experience. We are the ones that define and divine through our being and spirit, our breath and our word, our bond. Word is our bond. Our word is our agreement, is our commitment. That is the contract. That is the trust. And so, and this is why contracts on paper are used in legality, because there's no trust among thieves. So there's no honor among thieves. So there cannot be trust. So, the handshake, like, that's a whole nother way of existing. But that's trust. That's true trust. Knowing that you can extend yourself safely to someone else.
At its core. Yep, that's it at its core. It's actually the thing that you think it is. The thing that, like you said, Jiggy, it's been obfuscated. It's been turned into something that's other than what it is through legalese and through the deception of language and manipulation of language.
And there's nothing.
Every time they come out with a new version of Black's Law Dictionary, you can see how the words do not mean what they really mean.
Oh, and they remove things too and add things. So it's like, this is why, I like 5, I like 4th edition, I like the 8th edition. Like, there's different reasons for using different dictionaries, and they're all
I plead the 5th. I plead the 5th every single time, bro. 5th Black's Law.
Yeah. And so, there's nothing more important in all of this than understanding the definitions of the language and understanding the words and terms that you're using and how to express them through yourself, through your own unique expression. And the mastery of the words is what brings you the power. It's as abracadabra, as I speak, what I speak becomes. And when you think, Now you hear yourself think, so that's a form of speech. So that's a sound that's emitting into the universe that's also creating. So as you think, you create, you become, right? And so that's what Yossi was saying about seeing it happen. You have to know and accept that it's possible for you to do this, for it to be available to you. In your life, you've never done anything that you didn't think you could do, that you didn't think it was, if you thought something was impossible, it's not, it's never happened for you. Only when you think you could possibly do something, land a trick or create or accomplish this feat or what have you, achieve this goal, only when you accept that it's possible does it occur. That's when it opens up to you. And then it requires the proper action. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed by learning the principles and all of the language and all these things, reaffirm within yourself, I have the ability to understand this. I can.
And that's the alignment right there.
Right.
That's that alignment. And once you're aligned, alignment absolutely needs to come before action. Too many people have it twisted. And you know what I'm saying? Like we're put into this program where we think that action is the thing that we need to do, and then eventually we'll align with it. But alignment before action is the thing. The other way around, and you're chasing your tail, essentially. You're just running around in circles.
Yeah, I often say acceptance is allowance. So once you
That's
accept
beautiful.
it,
Yep.
it's allowance. So if I accept someone, that's the allowance. I don't have to tolerate someone that I don't. I don't have to tolerate someone that's dangerous in my experience, in my proximity. But
Correct.
I can accept that they exist and allow them to be who they are over there, and I can be over here, and I'm allowed to be over here. Now they're not, they're not a worry to me because I accept them. So if they do interact with me, I'll be like, damn, you shot the shit out of that guy. You better not fucking shoot me, George, because I'm not going to shoot you.
Yep, that's right. Acceptance is the key. And, I've often said awareness is the master key. That's the thing that unlocks all of the doors. But acceptance, definitely, that's your gateway right there. Yeah, it's going to tip over all of the dominoes, make your dream come into fruition.
Yeah, so it's and there's all kinds of things to, like we could spend a whole lifetime and multiple lifetimes and still not perfect or master all the areas of law, and but we can master, like Yossi said, we can find something that works, and then we can do that, and then once we have that in place, now you find something else that works, and you add that to that, and then you add the next thing, and then you add the next thing, and you're laying bricks, you're laying foundational bricks. Once you learn the trust, and you get yourself separate from the enlegius, and now you can look at things, like discharge. You can look at things at, like you said, how do I get, you can utilize that entity to pay yourself to manage its estate through the IRS. There's a process where you can actually pay yourself to administer the estate. There's private banking. There's so many different ways that are processes that can work in concert to give you greater access to your vision.
Yep. That is essentially what all of this is about. Yep,
Yeah.
that's where we're at.
So the private trust is is one of the foundations. It's one of the foundations. Having yourself, notifying them that you're the living man. And I say man because the law doesn't say woman. Man includes man and woman. The legal language includes woman. So, but you're the living entity. You're the living land, basically, which is above statutory law. Like the way the hierarchy of law, like if you learn the hierarchy of law, that will open things up as well. So we are basically, as U.S. citizens, we're basically living under feudalism. They just keep doing the same thing but changing the names. Under feudalism, you'd have a king that would be over the lands, right, over the king of the north, and he would have his barristers or his sheriffs, right, the barristers and the land barons, and they would own, and they would actually administrate the land. And then the citizens or peasants would be sharecroppers. acres. And then the land baron would take the percentage for the king and leave you with what was your, whatever you were agreed upon to get. And this is, here we have a form of that. Like that's why we have bar attorneys, barons, bar, barristers, they're barristers. It's the same thing. So like when you start breaking down the language, it starts becoming more clear. So, and another thing I'd recommend outside of law dictionaries is etymology. Etymology will open up
Get yourself a
language for
good
you.
etymology dictionary. Absolutely.
And the etymology online is a really great. I really do like the etymology online one. It's like got a red logo. Really good site. But etymology is the study of the root of language, and so or the origin of language. And so you start to see what the original meanings were. And like for instance, the word nice. The word nice means to be naive. That's the original use of the word nice, naive. So it's amazing how much things like language gets flipped. And within a few hundred years, it's a complete opposite of what it was originally meant. So I find etymology fascinating. So it's like I said, so language is the key here. And it's word, sound, power. As I speak becomes. What I speak becomes. I am that I am. I think, therefore I am. Like that's what this means. That's what those phrases mean.
Yep. And even though English is a business language and it has been used to manipulate the masses and essentially get us into this trap of ego identification, English is also at the same time, because of that inversion principle, it's the thing that if you study it, like Jiggy was saying, get yourself a good etymology dictionary. Look up the words that you're confused about. See what they actually mean, how they break down, how you can use them differently if possible. And then that's your gate to freedom.
Right. And any word that if you're reading, say you're reading Weiss's Concise Trustee Handbook, any word that you come across that you don't understand, any term that you don't understand, open up get the legal dictionary out, get that definition. Don't just read the definition, grab yourself an index card, write the word on the index card on the front page, on the front of it, flip it around. We're back in second grade. It's time for flashcards. This is fundamental learning. Write the definition on the back of the card and just start flipping through those cards. You're sitting at home, you're doing nothing, like you could watch TV or you could flip through your cards. And this is how you're going to teach yourself the language. This is how you're going to program that format into your mechanism of expression. It's so important to understand, you know what I mean? It's like reading the basic trust information and just getting an overview of it will eliminate 50% of your questions.
Yep. And
Instantly.
if it's written in such a way that it's an instruction manual for you to operate through, then 80%.
There's there's a book I have. It's Management Success. I can't find it online. It's out of print. I got it from my trust mentor. I don't know where you can get it, but I'm sure you can source it somewhere. But that's one of those books where it breaks down the trust. It shows you, like I've got it's examples of notes or of taking minutes, examples of every form that you could think of that you would need to create. It's all in that book, Success Management.
Yeah. We always make sure those minute sheets are included. This has been an awesome conversation, guys. Unfortunately, we're going at the 3 hour and 10-minute mark right here. I'm ready to go take the dog for a walk and have a nice night. I will stay on the phone for another 15 to 20 minutes if necessary, but then, we're going to call it a night. So if anybody has any other questions for anybody in the group, or you just want to keep shooting the shit, that's the mic will stay open as long as you guys need it for.
I did want to say that the ag license is effective. It's also, like you say, the documentation, there are limitations on that, and you've got to cover your bases with that. There's other ways to operate with you can have a private DOT carrier number. which is not in public. It's not in commerce. You can even haul. You can even have a truck, a tractor trailer, and haul goods and structure your contracts in a way that while you're transporting those goods are your property. You're not in commerce.
Yep. Yeah, it's much easier for truckers who are set up correctly and have both a public side LLC with a private side contract to be able to do that type of thing. But yeah, you can absolutely do that.
Janai had her hand up for a while. That's all I wanted to say.
Miss Janai, what's going on, sister?
Thank you. You're so sweet. I was just going to wait till everyone was done. My question was really for Jiggy. If you wouldn't mind, I exited out a few times by accident. You had recommended a beginner's guide earlier by, I think the author was Weiss.
Yeah.
Weiss. Weiss. Would you please write that again in the comments for me?
Yeah.
So I could check it out. I'm one of those people that I am learning, right? My intention is like learning, read. I don't understand any of the words. I've got to get myself some index cards, big words for Elmo. And I'm just a little kid over here. So if you, as far as all of this terminology, so that would be great. And anything that's like pretty simple terms, like what do they call those? Cliff notes for me. I'm not going to use the dummies analogy because that's not me, but I appreciate you guys so much. Lots of learning. And I know people must go, but Jiggy, if you would write that in the comments, I wasn't sure if in the YouTube, the comments are still going to be there because some reason I lost mine.
Yeah. It's called Weiss Concise Trustee Handbook. I put it in the chat.
You did. I couldn't find it when I went back just because I
put it in there
exited out.
again.
So
I put it
Weiss
in there
Concise
again.
Handbook.
Yeah, and
Trustees.
these are easily, like the ones that I recommended are easily found just with a Google search as a free PDF. I did post a link to one of my Trust Mentors site. He has a document tab with a bunch of really great documents that are free downloads. So that's a good resource as well.
Okay. So does Carter or anyone know, like if I go back on YouTube, will all the comments be on there so I can scroll? Because I lost mine on this particular chat. They just only go back so far. So I guess my question. Okay.
You can definitely go back to the YouTube feed for Trust Medicine People, type it into the YouTube, go to subscribe, make sure that you can see all of the I think Carter probably will have it up within 24 hours. And then you can go
I've seen all the other
and
ones.
then go to click more, and you'll see that it's itemized.
And click
already.
more. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yep. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there was another one about unincorporated irrevocable pure business trusts. That's another good one.
Okay, great. I think I'm going to start with like just one, just because I
Yeah,
need to start slow. But I appreciate your flashcards idea, and I found the etymology online with the lion and the crest. Is that the one that you're looking at?
Let me look real quick. And
That's okay. It matters not, but I just really
it's a tan and red logo.
tan and red. Okay.
Yeah, it's got like here. Let me etymology. Yeah, it's the online etymology dictionary. OE.
Yep. That's the one I found. It had a lion and a crest at the top, like it had like a little. I think that's what that is. The crest.
Oh yeah, I see. It's like a lion or a Pegasus or some sort of.
It's a Leo, I think.
Yeah, that's a really great resource.
Great. Thank you guys so much.
Also Cambridge Online.
Okay.
As far as if you're getting into statutes and things like that and definitions, law, Cambridge University has a free law page, an amazing resource for free.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to sign off, you guys. It's been really cool, and I appreciate all of you and many blessings.
Thanks for hopping on tonight. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Carter just posted a link to the Weiss Concise Handbook if you're still on.
Yep. Thank you. I'll check it out.
Yep. It's a good read, and it'll clarify things. You'll be amazed at how quickly things start to make sense.
I appreciate your confidence in me.
You can do it.
Yeah. Oh no, and that's why I'm here, because I'm, I am a learner, and This is something, let me just share real quick before we go, the irony of this situation. Never had money. I don't want to be a part of it. I hate it all, you know, and therefore I've never had any money.
Yeah.
And when it came to math and all the worst, most, you know, painful years of my life, right? So these words, I'm like, oh my God, he just said like DBA, like what it, you know, so like, what do? You Google it, right? So again, you know, I might be, you know, a little slow for my taste because I'm hard on myself and can be impatient with myself, but this is great. And it's just what I needed at the right time. And again, I'm just learning, I'm getting up my kind of comfort with these terms. And, you know, again, who can I trust? You know, right now I'm working on trusting myself so that I can trust others. Right. So can I keep my promises to myself? Do I have a clear vision? Am I all of that? And I just really appreciate you guys so much.
Yeah, beautiful. Just remember that you're exactly where we are when we started.
Yep.
And also about trust. You got to trust yourself first. And I don't trust other people. I mean, and hear me out. Here's the reason. Because if I don't extend trust to you, then if you don't uphold your end of the deal, I don't get mad at you. You're not liable. The way I approach trust is I trust myself. I trust myself to know and to be able to discern and listen to my core and identify and discern who I cannot trust. And so if I extend myself to someone who violates that extension or does not uphold their end of the bargain, I'm the one who broke my trust. They did not.
I feel you on that one.
So
that's why, you know, I really have to trust and get clear because right now I'm not as clear as I need to be, you know. So, you know, I've lived my whole life on intuition and it saved my butt most of the time. Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, but yes, I'd like to establish further trust with me so that I can trust that no matter what happens, right, I've still got me.
Exactly. Then you only extend yourself safely because when you're feeling uncertain, you might, you know, give the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not going to go 100%. Let's start off 70%.
Yeah, we're all learning here, and that's what I'm doing here in the group. And, you know, again, I'm not the type to, you know, dive right in. I'm a slow, you know, and steady kind of person. But
what about baby steps?
Right. Yeah, baby steps and then slow and steady. And, you know, but I move slower, and I think, you know, just culturally, personally, but my thought process, I'm just a slower.
Your pace is perfect for you.
Right. Yeah, and I'm comfortable with that. I don't feel like the need to, like, you know, I don't feel stupid for not knowing, but that's why I appreciate this group so much, and I want to be respectful of people's time. And Yossi's got to walk his dog, and I just love all of you very much, and appreciate the knowledge, and look forward to next time. Thanks, Jiggy. It's been a pleasure. And everybody, it's been a pleasure meeting everybody. I appreciate it so much.
Likewise. Yeah, have a good night. And I've had that same relationship with money. I'm still working on opening up the channel to access the currency, enable the access to exuberance. But you know, I'm a ginger, and I used to get sunburnt, and I used to have like sun poisoning all the time, allergic to the sun, and I used to really not like the sun because I had a really bad sunburn when I was a kid. And then when I started having my awakening, I realized that no life exists without the sun. And I changed my perspective on the sun, and I started offering it love and gratefulness. And now I don't burn. Now I don't. I mean, I'll burn if I'm irresponsible, but I don't. I used to burn in like 10 minutes. Now I don't burn like that.
Yep.
I don't have.
Your body resonates with the melanin, bro.
I was gonna say, did you move to a warmer climate?
No, I actually.
No, all he did was change his perspective.
That's right. He melanated himself through his mitochondrial charge.
Yup. He changed his perspective, and that one thing made it so that he was no longer burning in the sun.
Why is it so simple?
I'm a spectral being, so I do have, you know, probably about 30-40% of my body, you know, 30% of my body is melanated.
All of us, believe it or not. I mean, I'm white as snow. My dad's like Trinidadian and mixed and everything, and I am Snow White over here, but I have melanin because we all do. Just it's what level and latitude and longitude, but very interesting stuff. And yeah,
But that change, it wasn't a physical change. It was a mental, emotional change.
yeah.
To hate and fear the sun because of the pain and experience that I had as a child, and like a really bad sunburn, 2nd degree.
It's like me and money. Like, I hate you. Why do I need you? I just can't stand you. And where's it been all my life?
You don't need money. Money doesn't really exist. We're all
It's
dealing
currency.
with
It's currency. Yeah, that's right.
And the wealthy people use debt to
I'm
enrich.
starting to see that and understand that more.
What we're really seeking is access to wealth, which it's much bigger than money or currency. Well, wealth is being rich. That's having foundation, family, community, abundance.
Yeah. Only currency in terms of energy is really how I've been defining that.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's current. That's energy.
The old Tesla tried and true. That's really what I'm thinking in of terms, because this is what's kept me away from it. This is what's going to bring me back to it, whatever it is that sustains me, not paper, obviously.
Yeah, the breath, spirit is the thing that sustains you, and authenticity is the currency.
Well, is the current. The current sea is current energy that has been bound to the sea. It flows to the sea. It's Admiralty Maritime. Currency is Admiralty Maritime.
Thank you.
Absolutely. There's that
Currency.
etymology dictionary that's built into you, brother.
Right.
I love it.
That's the energy, which is the inner chi, which is the inner life force energy, inner life. That's the chi.
That's right.
Inner chi.
The currency. Instead of the current, like where is it going? Gotcha.
Right. Well, the current, like I said, the current flows to the sea, which is the Admiralty Maritime Law. We are the current.
That's
and they're flowing us into their sea, which is where they rule.
Correct. Right. So I'm not going to think that in terms of currency.
No, we just went after it. We're the captain of the ship. We don't even own the vessel.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's all shifting your mind, and it'll come naturally as it does, and it'll, like I said, it keeps opening up, and I'm still applying, and I don't have as much as I'd like to have established and set up in my estate. I'm still learning and applying, but I'm glad that I'm able to share things to help people, to assist them in moving forward, and also in doing so, I learn as I'm sharing.
Yep, everyone here, Yossi, Oz, Jiggy, everybody, started this, and everyone's questions, just it's really great. So sweet dreams, y'all. Good night. Appreciate
it. Yossi, Tony, Carter.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, guys.
Yeah, brother. Thank you all for hopping on. We really appreciate you.
All right. Wholeness and balance to you.
Peace and love, everybody.
Peace and love, guys.